Psikologi itu saya bilang ilmu yang dinamis.
Ilmu jiwa, ilmu manusia.
Buat saya ya ilmu yang benar-benar kita bisa kembangkan. Ilmu-ilmu yang applicable ketika itu bisa diaplikasikan di masyarakat, keluarga, organisasi.
Psikologi membantu kita berpikir dengan paradigma yang berbeda. Kita juga belajar sendiri gitu loh, bagaimana kita bisa mengenal diri sendiri, dan itu bisa kita bagikan ke orang-orang lain. Semakin kita bisa belajar memahami bahwa semua orang itu unik dengan karakter masing-masing, dengan bahwa semuanya itu pasti ada kelebihannya lah.
Kami, Fakultas Psikologi, sebagai salah satu wajah Universitas Diponegoro, selalu mengedepankan kualitas, penyesuaian, dan pengembangan program dan layanan untuk menciptakan generasi-generasi muda terbaik bangsa.
Selamat datang di Fakultas Psikologi Universitas Diponegoro, salah satu fakultas yang memberikan pendidikan psikologi terbaik di Indonesia. Mengapa kami yang terbaik? Inilah kami.
Tenaga pengajar kami adalah dosen-dosen yang berkompeten di bidangnya. Tenaga kependidikan dan staf pendukung lainnya juga adalah pekerja profesional. Sehingga Fakultas Psikologi Universitas Diponegoro mampu melaksanakan berbagai program pendidikan dan layanan secara profesional dengan selalu mengedepankan kualitas.
Fakultas Psikologi Undip saat ini memiliki 2 program studi. Yang pertama adalah program studi S1 Psikologi yang mengajarkan psikologi umum, meliputi psikologi eksperimen dan psikologi umum, kemudian psikologi pendidikan dan perkembangan, dan psikologi sosial serta psikologi industri dan organisasi. Kemudian yang kedua adalah program studi S2, yaitu Magister Psikologi. Program ini menawarkan 2 peminatan. Yang pertama adalah peminatan psikologi keluarga, dan yang kedua adalah peminatan kesehatan mental. Kami juga memiliki 4 research center. Yang pertama adalah Pusat Pemberdayaan Keluarga. Yang kedua, Aging Research Center atau disingkat ARC. Yang ketiga adalah Center for Experimental and Psychometric Studies. Kemudian yang keempat, Center for Career and Capacity Development Studies, merupakan wadah bagi para dosen dan mahasiswa yang memiliki minat di area-area tertentu untuk mengembangkan potensinya di bidang pendidikan, penelitian, pengembangan diri maupun publikasi ilmiah.
Kami kuat dalam jaringan kerjasama untuk pengembangan program dan kegiatan di Fakultas Psikologi Universitas Diponegoro. Fakultas Psikologi Universitas Diponegoro didukung kuat oleh jaringan industri dan jaringan universitas terbaik di dunia, baik secara akademik maupun non-akademik. Fakultas Psikologi Universitas Diponegoro memiliki kepercayaan bahwa memperkuat jaringan dengan alumni dan bekerja sama dengan berbagai pihak terkait adalah langkah memperkuat kualitas pendidikan yang kami berikan, melengkapi fasilitas yang kami sediakan, dan memberikan kemudahan bagi lulusan kami untuk menemukan dunia kerja. Berbagai fasilitas untuk pengembangan kompetensi mahasiswa telah disediakan dengan baik. Menyadari pentingnya komunikasi antara dosen, mahasiswa, sivitas akademika lainnya, dan publik, kami di dalam website dan sosial media fakultas selalu memberikan informasi-informasi up-to-date tentang segala kegiatan-kegiatan dan berita pendidikan seputar fakultas. Fakultas Psikologi Universitas Diponegoro mendukung penuh kegiatan-kegiatan pengembangan kompetensi mahasiswa sebagai wujud keinginan kami membangun lulusan yang memiliki value dalam berorganisasi, karakter leadership yang kuat, dan kemampuan bekerja teamwork.
Karena psikologi itu kayak ini sih ya, kayak rumah.
Ketika kita itu tidak happy di dalam suatu lingkungan, maka kita tidak bisa tumbuh kembang.
Jadi di sini ya kerasa banget sih kalau misalnya lingkungan Fakultas Psikologi Undip ini tuh benar-benar suportif banget.
Tentunya menjadi pilihan yang terbaik juga untuk adik-adik menimba ilmu di Semarang.
Fakultas Psikologi Universitas Diponegoro merupakan pilihan terbaik untuk mencapai masa depan gemilang. Kami tunggu Anda di kampus kami.
Psikologi itu saya bilang ilmu yang dinamis,
Ilmu jiwa, ilmu manusia.
buat saya ya ilmu yang benar-benar kita bisa kembangkan, ilmu-ilmu yang applicable ketika itu bisa diaplikasikan di masyarakat, keluarga, organisasi.
Psikologi membantu kita berpikir dengan paradigma yang berbeda. Kita juga belajar sendiri gitu loh, bagaimana kita bisa mengenal diri sendiri, dan itu bisa kita bagikan ke orang-orang lain. Semakin kita bisa belajar memahami bahwa semua orang itu unik dengan karakter masing-masing, dengan bahwa semuanya itu pasti ada kelebihannya lah.
We, the Faculty of Psychology, is part of the phases of Diponegoro University, always prioritize quality, improvement, and growth of our education programs and services to create the best young generations for Indonesia.
Welcome to the Faculty of Psychology, Diponegoro University, Indonesia, one of the best faculty offering psychology education in Indonesia. You want to know more? This is us.
We have competent lecturers in their field, professional education, and support staffs, which enhance the Faculty of Psychology of Diponegoro University to be able to deliver various qualified education conduct and services aligned with our vision and mission.
The Faculty of Psychology, Diponegoro University has two programs. First, we have Bachelor of Psychology program. In this program, we teach general psychology, which include educational psychology, developmental psychology, experimental and general psychology, social psychology, and also industrial and organizational psychology. The second one, we have Magister Science program. In this program, we offer two study focuses. First, we have family psychology, and the second one, we have mental health. We also have 4 research centers. First of all, we have Family Empowerment Center. The second one, we have Aging Research Center. The third one, we have Center for Experimental and Psychometric Studies. And the last one, we have Center for Career and Capacity Development Studies. Activities of students and our colleagues in research and also self-development and also service to the community.
We are strong in our networking and collaborate to advance our both academic or non-academic programs and activities in the faculty. We are strongly supported by industrial networks and all the best universities throughout the world. Diponegoro University's Faculty of Psychology believes backbone network with graduates and partnership relation with various related parties is a step to strengthen the quality of education that we could provide, complement the facilities we offer, and help our graduates to find work in the industry. Faculty of Psychology of Diponegoro University has arranged for various facilities to develop every student competencies. We recognize the importance of communication between lecturers, students, other academics, and the public. We strive to provide up-to-date information about all education activities and news about the faculty in the website and faculty social media. The Faculty of Psychology, Diponegoro University fully supports student competency development activities. As expression of our passion to yield graduates who have values in business, strong leadership characteristics, and the ability to work in team.
Karena sekolah gitu kayak ini sih ya, kayak rumah.
Ketika kita itu tidak happy di dalam suatu lingkungan, maka kita tidak bisa tumbuh kembang.
Jadi di sini ya kerasa banget sih kalau misalnya lingkungan di Fakultas Psikologi Undip ini tuh benar-benar suportif banget.
Tentunya menjadi pilihan yang terbaik juga untuk adik-adik menimba ilmu di Semarang.
The Faculty of Psychology Diponegoro University is one of the best choice for a brighter future. We look forward to seeing you here.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shalom, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, greetings and best wishes to all of us. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the leading post-pandemic world webinar, Faculty of Psychology, Diponegoro University and Center for Career and Capacity Development Studies, or CAREERS 2021. The Honorable Vice Rector for Research and Innovation, Professor Dr. Insinyur Ambarianto, MSc, the Honorable Dean of the Faculty of Psychology, Professor Dian Ratna Sawitri, SPC, MSc, Ph.D., the Honorable Vice Dean of Academic and Student Affairs, Dr. Dian Veronica Sakti Kaluti, SPC, MC, the Honorable Vice Dean of Resources, Dr. Novi Konitatin, SPC, MA, the Honorable Head of the Psychology Faculty Study Program, Dr. Endah Kumaladewi, MKes, the Honorable Professor Sendjaya, Ph.D. and Mistress Corina D.S. Riantoputra, M.Com, Ph.D. as speakers, the Honorable Mr. Mirwan Surya, Perdhana, S.A. M.M. Ph.D. as moderator, and all the audience who attended this event. Ladies and gentlemen, please let me introduce myself. I'm Tasya Artia Rumiris, and I will be the Master of Ceremony to guide this seminar today. Ladies and gentlemen, before entering the main session, let us start by praying first, so the event that will be held today can run well smoothly and without any problems. Let us pray. Praying finished. Ladies and gentlemen, on this nice occasion, allow me to present the agenda for today's event as follows. The first agenda is opening. The second is opening remarks from Professor Dian Ratna Sawitri, SPC, MSc, PhD as Dean of Faculty of Psychology, Diponegoro University. The third is opening remarks from Professor Dr. Insinyur Ambarianto, MSc as Vice Rector for Research and Innovation, Diponegoro University. The fourth is a public lecture session delivered by Professor Sendjaya, Ph.D. and Mistress Corina D.S. Riantoputra, M.Com, Ph.D. and moderated by Mr. Mirwan Surya Perdhana, S.A. M.M. Ph.D., followed by question and answer session. And the fifth or the final agenda is closing. That's for the rundown today. I hope everyone is enjoying the event. Now, we invite the Dean of the Faculty of Psychology to give an opening remark. For Professor Dian Ratna Sawitri, SPC, MSc, PhD, the screen and time is yours.
Okay, thank you, Tasya, for your nice introduction today. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, everyone. The Honorable Visiting Professor, Professor Sendjaya, PhD, the Honorable Speaker, Associate Professor Corina Riantoputra, Master of Commerce, PhD, the Honorable Vice Deans and Heads of Study Program of the Faculty of Psychology, all the lecturers, students, and participants. It is my great pleasure to welcome all of you to the leading post-pandemic webinar as the first part of the second world-class professor program, Leadership and Career Development webinar series held by the Faculty of Psychology, Universitas Diponegoro, and the Center for Career and Capacity Development Studies. The second webinar will take place on the 17th of September, and the third one will be on the 8th of October 2021. In this special occasion, I'm so grateful that we can invite Professor Sendjaya. Good morning, Prof. Sen. He is a professor of leadership at Swinburne Business School and research director at the Department of Management and Marketing, Swinburne University of Technology, Australia. Prof. Sen and I firstly met at the talk show Diaspora a few months ago, held by Kantor Pemeringkatan Undip, and we would like to thank you for being here today. Later, we would like to hear about your experiences as a researcher in leadership area. I think leadership is already a big puzzle for most of us. I believe that pandemic situation will have an impact also to leadership, and we are now ready to have your presentation, and hopefully we can have fruitful discussion. And also we want to hear about your experience as an Indonesian diaspora who has been living in Australia for about 20 years. I think it will be great for us to know that as well. In this occasion, I would also welcome Associate Professor Corina Riantoputra, Master of Commerce, PhD. Good morning, Corina. It's good to see you today. She is the head of Research Cluster, Leadership, Decent Work, and Diversity, Faculty of Psychology, Universitas Indonesia. It is great to know that you and Professor Sendjaya have been working together for years. We would like to hear the story about your research as you are the head of our research center, and also we would like to hear about your experience and also research findings. This morning, we have also Professor Ambarianto. Thank you, Prof. Ambarianto. He is the Vice Rector for Research and Innovation, who will open this webinar. And he is now with us. Thank you, Prof. Ambar, for being here today. And we also have our moderator, Pak Mirwan Surya Perdhana, Ph.D. He is one of the co-founder of our research center here, the Center for Career and Capacity Development Studies. We have been working on several projects, and the latest one is the project on research resilience in Indonesian academics. Thank you also for being here today. And for all of the committee and all of the audience, thank you for attending this webinar. We will use 60-40% English Bahasa Indonesia, or 70-30, it's okay. As we are now trying to offer international exposure for all of the students and lecturers here in Indonesia, and hoping that all of us can communicate very well. Thank you. Have a great webinar. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I leave it back to Tasya as an MC.
Thank you to Professor Dian Ratna Sawitri, SPC, MSc, PhD, for the opening speech. Ladies and gentlemen, we invite Vice Rector for Research and Innovation, Universitas Diponegoro, to give an opening remarks. For Professor Dr. Insinyur Ambarianto, MSc, the time is yours.
Thank you, Tasya. Good morning. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Honorable Visiting Professor, Professor Sendjaya, Ph.D. Honorable Speaker, Ibu Corina Riantoputra, Master of Commerce, Ph.D. Honorable Dean of the Faculty of Psychology, Universitas Ponegoro, Indonesia. Honorable Vice Deans, Pak Mirwan. Good morning, Pak Mirwan, all lecturers, students, and participants. It is my great pleasure to welcome all of you to the second World Class Professor Program, Leadership and Career Development Webinar Series, which is held by Faculty of Psychology, Universitas Ponegoro, and the Center for Career and Capacity Development Studies from the 3rd September to the 8th of October 2021. This event, along with other international events held by Universitas Ponegoro, represent our commitment to continuous improvement on our academic institution towards excellent research world-class university. On behalf of Universitas Ponegoro, I would like to express my deep gratitude to Professor Sendjaya, a Professor of Leadership from Swinburne University of Technology, Australia. I hope this good partnership and collaboration will continue in the future. Prof. Sendjaya, I think we first met in the talk show Diaspora a few months ago, held by Kantor Pemerikatan Undip, or maybe the meeting with Dikti, who tried to coordinate us to have a collaboration with Swinburne University. At time I told you that you are happy to participate in our program activities, and it seems that the Dean of the Faculty of Psychology quickly responded, so that we can have this webinar today. I also would like to express my gratitude to Ibu Corina Riantoputra, Master of Commerce, Ph.D., the Head of Research Cluster Leadership, Decent Work and Diversity, Faculty of Psychology, Universitas Indonesia. I believe that your knowledge will be of our great advantage. Lastly, I would like to congratulate Faculty of Psychology, Universitas Ponegoro for conducting this event, especially on the committee for organizing the world-class professor program after the success of the first one. Finally, with the permission of all of us and Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, the Leadership and Career Development Webinar Series 2021 is officially open. Wishing all of you to have a fruitful and rewarding discussion. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you. Back to you, Tasya.
Thank you to Professor Dr. Insinyur Ambarianto, MSc, for the opening speech. Ladies and gentlemen, before entering the main event, there is a photo shoot session first. For all participants, please get ready and turn on the camera. When it's ready, I will take the pictures by the counts of 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so for the first slide, I will count 1, 2, 3. And the second slide, 1, 2, 3. The third slide, 1, 2, 3. The fourth slide, 1, 2, and 3. The fifth slide, the sixth slide.
Okay, Tasya, maybe we can continue later and we can start the webinar now. And I think the committee will take the photos and the audience will still open their camera.
Thank you for Professor Dianata Savitri, and thank you for your participation. Ladies and gentlemen, now we go to the main event, Leadership and Career Development Webinar Series with the theme of Leading Post-Pandemic World Webinar will be moderated by Mr. Mirwan Surya Perdhana, SA, MM, Ph.D. To get to know Mr. Mirwan more, let's take a look at the brief CV. And to the operator, please share the screen for us. Thank you. Mr. Mirwan Surya Perdhana, SAMM PhD, is a head of Master of Management, Faculty of Economic and Business, Universitas Diponegoro. Mr. Mirwan is also a cross-cultural management and leadership researcher, co-founder of the Center for Career and Capacity Development Studies, or CAREERS, also a research consultant for the Central Bank of Indonesia, Central Java Corridor for Trade, Investment, and Tourism, the trainer of the National Electricity Company, and mentor and speaker at the first Australia-Indonesia Police Leadership Forum. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Mirwan Surya Perdhana, SAMM PhD. For Mr. Mirwan, the screen and time is yours.
Thank you very much, Tasha, honorable participant. Welcome to the second world-class professor program arranged by the Faculty of Psychology, Diponegoro University. As we all know, many changes and trends in business worlds happened during the COVID-19 pandemic. During the pandemic, many were laid off. Of those who remained, many were displaced to virtual environments. Those with children, like me, had to deal with homeschooling and childcare on top of work responsibilities. COVID also caused business and convention travel halted. In-person meetings were replaced by online gatherings, a concept that spilled into personal lives. The interpersonal environment of an office evaporated abruptly. Isolation became the standard during the COVID-19. Also, office space became vacant space. Managers began reimagining the true need for traditional office space. As we emerge from the pandemic, we arrive at a new normal. The business world will look and act differently in many ways. A hybrid workforce is emerging. A new meetings normal is emerging. The significant opportunity for financial efficiency remains. Leaders can attract better fitting talent and find more affordable virtual associates from lower cost of living regions. Job seekers can find better jobs, better employers, and eventually more competitive salaries. There is a need to understand how leaders should deal with the post-pandemic situation, what kind of leadership style that they should use, along with its opportunities and challenges of the new normal situation. To address the issues, there is probably no one better placed or qualified to give us all insight about how to lead in post-pandemic world than the leadership experts. Our first speaker is a very well-known leadership scholar, Professor Sendjaya. Yeah, could MC present the profile of Professor Sendjaya, please? Professor Sendjaya is a very well-known leadership scholar. He is a professor of leadership from Swinburne Business School, Swinburne University of Technology in Melbourne, Australia. Among leadership scholars, Professor Sendjaya is known as one of the leading experts in the field of leadership, specifically servant leadership. His article titled Servant Leadership, Its Origin, Development, and Application in Organizations have been cited for more than 1,200 times. And the other one, related to measuring servant leadership using servant leadership behavior scale, has been cited for more than 1,100 times. In total, all of his works has been cited for 5,374 times in Google Scholar. For me personally, I knew Professor Sendjaya's reputation since I was a doctoral student in Australia and have attended some of his conferences, Servant Leadership Roundtable, I think back in 2011. Also Lead in Asia. So Professor Sendjaya, it's a great honor for me to be able to moderate your session this morning. And ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Professor Sendjaya. Professor, time is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Mirwan, for that warm introduction. And good morning, everyone. This is such a privilege for me to be able to speak to you. And I would like to thank Professor Ambarianto and Professor Dian Witri for the kind invitation to Universitas Diponegoro. I think the first webinar today that we will going through together, that will be an important one because we have 3 webinars that have been planned. So if I'm not doing a job well done today, you're not going to return for the second one. So I want to make sure that the material today will entice you to keep coming back for more for the second and third webinar. So just a little bit of personal background. I've been living in Australia for 24 years now, to be precise, but I still obviously prefer patis than Vegemite. For those of you who know, Vegemite is something that looks very similar to patis, but completely different taste, which is a very Australian thing. I would prefer tahu patis anytime than Vegemite and bread, but that's my personal thing. I wish that I could be in Semarang rather than doing it via Zoom, but obviously the pandemic stops us from doing that. So this is perhaps something that is second best alternative for us to be able to learn something that is very important in this pandemic situation. I would like to also appreciate those of you who are here today, and I think I know some people who are here, Pak Tony, Ibu Herlina, and obviously Dr. Corina Riantoputra is a long-time colleague, and I'm glad that she can join us this morning. So let's start by, let me start my screen share first, and then we can start with the material. So we're going to look at leading in the post-pandemic world. Just go full screen. And this is an important topic, as Dr. Mirwan has mentioned, because we are now in the middle of this pandemic. It's almost like, as one author put it, and this is in a journal article, it's like the whole world is being put into a box, right? And then the box is pummeled by hundreds of people, right? And we thought that it's going to be ending very soon, in 6 months, 12 months. But now we have been, in this context for more than 1.5 years, 2 years, and we are still in it. And people think that we have seen the light at the end of the tunnel, but I think that tunnel is still quite long. So we're going to be here for a while in the same situation. So we have to creatively think, what is the implication on leadership? How that changes the way we lead ourselves and the way we lead other people. By the way, I must, as Prof. Fitri mentioned, to address all of you in English. So I'll be using English most of the time, right? But I'll be using some Bahasa Indonesia, obviously, later as well as appropriate. So what I want to discuss today is obviously this topic, how we as leaders, and I assume that many of you are leaders in your various roles in different sectors, or you are leaders wannabe, you are candidates, right, for leaders of the future, because many of you perhaps are Ph.D. students, master students, undergraduate students at Undip and other universities. So I think it's important for us to understand, what is it that we need to prepare? What is it that we need to pay attention to when we want to lead in this post-pandemic world? So let me start with a big idea, because this is kind of the summary statement of my presentation this morning. Servant leaders mobilize people across all organizations to cope with the adaptive challenges that require adaptive changes in the post-pandemic world. So my research in the past 15 years have focused on servant leadership, as some of you know. My PhD, which finished in 2005, looked at the development of a scale, a measurement instrument. So it's a psychometric validation study, essentially, of a servant leadership behavior scale. And since then, I continued to study servant leadership in various contexts, in Indonesia, in Australia, and other states, and other countries. So that's why I want to link this presentation to servant leadership, because I think it takes servant leaders to actually lead people. All right, now we are back on recording. It takes servant leaders to actually lead us through this pandemic. That's my belief, and I think there are data which I will share with you which support that argument. All right, so this is the big idea. Servant leaders will mobilize people across all organizations, so across all levels, to cope with the adaptive challenges that come with the pandemic situation. And I used this picture of a chameleon. A chameleon is known for its adaptive capacity, right? Rather than using my self-portrait, I think a chameleon is a better one here because of its adaptive capacity. Chameleon, as we all know, has a unique capacity to be able to change the color of its skin to adapt to its environment, so that it can face its enemies, kind of in a very lethal ways. So the message that I want to get across is that if now we have the pandemic, things have to change. The way we lead ourselves, the way we lead other people, they have to change, right? One of the definitions of insanity, kegilaan, right? Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. That's insanity. And the person who defined it like that is actually Albert Einstein. So if after the pandemic or even during the pandemic, leaders do not change their behaviors, they are insane. That's basically what Einstein suggested. Kegilaan adalah melakukan hal yang sama terus-menerus dan berharap akan ada hasil yang berbeda. That's what insanity is. So I think we need to think carefully about that. So let me give you a definition first of servant leadership. So this is the way we came up with, and let me tell you a bit of a background of this definition. So we kind of did a collaboration among main leadership scholars, servant leadership scholars, and that included Bob Leiden in University of Chicago and Dirk van der Rendong from Erasmus University in the Netherlands. They both my good colleagues. They look at servant leadership. They have their own skills of servant leadership, right? And Nathan, Eva, and Robin, they are my former PhD students. They are now wonderful academics in different institutions, right? So we kind of did this collaboration and did an article on a state-of-the-art review of servant leadership. It was published in Leadership Quarterly, and I'm pleased to tell you that this is now the most cited and the most downloaded article in the last 3 years, in the journal. And Leadership Quarterly is now the premier leadership journal, and the latest impact factor is 10 point something, right, which is up there with Academy of Management journal. Now, I'm not bragging about that, but I'm just telling you that servant leadership is actually now up there at the top when it comes to what leadership theory that we have to apply in the future. And the answer is servant leadership, because it has received the highest amount of empirical validation, more studies compared to other leadership theories in the past 5 years, right? It's perhaps not the most studied yet, but in the last 5 years, you will see more studies done on servant leadership than other leadership theories. So that's a great news for people who are doing this study like me. So here is how we define it. Another oriented approach to leadership manifested through one-on-one prioritizing of follower individual needs and interests. Let me stop there. So the focus of servant leadership is always other people. It's not about me. There are five most important people in the world: I, me, my, mine, myself, right? But servant leadership is not about me. It's always about other people. How can I help other people with my gifts and my talents so that the people around me can become what they are capable of becoming, can be the best versions of themselves, right? That's kind of the primary, the key tenet, primary philosophy of servant leadership. Now, how do they do that? They do it through one-on-one prioritizing of follower individual needs and interests. Why is it one-on-one? Because everyone is unique. Now I can see that we have 526 participants in this Zoom meeting, right? Every one of us is different. If you don't believe me, just have a look at the screen with our participants. We all look different, right? So we all have different struggle, needs, aspirations, dreams, and servant leaders recognizes that. So if you are a parent, right, with children in this Zoom meeting, you would know what I mean. The only way to treat your children the same is by treating them differently. Correct, parents? Why? Because each child is different. So if we extend that principle to leadership, we need to understand that our followers, our staff members, each of them is different, and that's why you cannot lead people in groups only, but you have to address them, on a one-on-one basis, understanding where they come from, what their strengths and limitations are, what their aspirations would be, and you actually help them to achieve those aspirations. So that's kind of the bottom line of servant leadership approach. The outcome of that, it's outward reorienting of their concern for self towards concerns for others within the organization and the larger community. So the more followers relate with servant leaders, the more they are themselves turn into servant leaders, right? Because their concern now is not about I, me, my, mind, myself, but now they have more concerns towards other people and then towards the company, the organization, perhaps a university or a school or a company, whatever that is, and by extension, the larger community. So there's a silent revolution, if you like. That's the words that the Greenleaf Center in the US uses in their website. There's a silent revolution with servant leadership that changes the society for the better. So one of the earliest writers of servant leadership is Robert Greenleaf, obviously, and he would say something that make me kind of shocked when I first read it. He said the acid test, the most important test of servant leadership, is you look at the most marginalized people in the society, right? Who are the least privileged, people in the society. If they haven't been growing, they haven't been developed under the leadership, right? The current regime. That means whoever the leaders are, they are not servant leaders. But if the least privileged group of people in the society or in the organization have grown and developed to be better people, intellectually, financially, emotionally, psychologically, in all these dimensions, then you can guarantee that these leaders are servant leaders. Now, that actually blew me away. I think that is a very important measure. So if you want to know, right, is Indonesia being led by a servant leader or a group of servant leaders? Well, take a look at the least privileged society, right? Is your organization being led by servant leaders? Well, take a look at the least privileged groups in the organization, and then you can tell me the answer, right? So that's basically what servant leadership is. So with that background, let me now give you the agenda, right? The outline of my talk in the remaining time that I have. 5 leadership imperatives using the servant leadership philosophy. Number 1, we have to be contact-rich change agent. We have to embrace adaptive challenges. We have to create psychological safety. We have to build resilience in our team, and we have to attend to self-care. So if you like, this is moving from leading the organization to leading teams to leading self. That's kind of the flow that I'm following now, right? So let's start with the most external aspect, and that is leading the organization, and then leading teams, and finally leading self. So what does it mean to be a context-rich change agent? Well, studies on leadership, right, for the past 125 years have been preoccupied with leaders and to a lesser extent with followers, right? Now, we all know that leadership always comprises of 3 factors: leaders, followers, and context, right? So I always say to my students, MBA students, that it takes 3 to tango when it comes to leadership. Not takes 2 to tango, but it takes 3. There are 3 elements: leaders, followers, and context. Now, context is the most neglected dimension of leadership, because remember, the definition of leadership is not just about the leader, but it's about an influential relationship where leaders and followers together, they influence each other so that they can engage in ways, in strategies, in behaviors that would make positive changes. So these follower and leader relationship, they always occur in a context, right? Leadership never happens in a vacuum. So you always need a context. Now, this context, however, is not studied, as often as leaders and followers. So what I'm trying to get across in this number one imperative is that we need to be a context-driven, context-rich change agent. Now, I'm not saying we have to be data-driven, right? I'm not even saying that we have to be data-informed. I will tell you the difference between data-driven and data-informed. I think with all this proliferation of data that we have, a lot of fake news, a lot of messages which are not true that we receive on a daily basis, especially in the pandemic season, right? We are getting confused, right? And leaders need to be data driven, but that's not enough, because if you are making decisions only based on data, right, the data only tells part of the picture, because we have to also understand the context, the culture that we are in, how to deal with the Indonesian public would be completely different with how you deal with the Australian public when it comes to vaccination, for example. So we need to be context rich rather than data informed or even or data driven, right? So that's kind of my first point. Now let me give you some of the elaboration on this context-rich change agents. So we all know about disruptive economy. We all know this. We all know that there are these technological breakthroughs that have happened in the past 10 years or so. McKinsey and there's so many other consulting firms are pioneers in kind of pointing us towards what are the main technological breakthroughs that we have. Things like digitalization, AI, machine learning, Internet of Things, you name it. And because of these disruptive technologies, we have these wonderful disruptive companies. Well, maybe not so wonderful, because all the small and medium enterprises suddenly do not know what to do, and the established companies are kind of confused, right, because of these trailblazers. Uber, the world's largest taxi company, they have no cars. Facebook, the most popular media owner, creates no content. Alibaba, the most valuable retailer, has no inventory. Airbnb, the world's largest accommodation provider, has no real estate. And you can put and add Bitcoin, the world's largest bank, but has no cash, right? So we have all this disruptive economy that is happening as we speak, right? But that's not the only external factors that are happening. There are also socio-demographic trends. And I think I would argue that I think the socio-demographic shifts is more important than these technological breakthroughs. For example, Indonesia has the so-called the golden generation, generasi emas 2045, where we're going to have 70% of the Indonesian population will be in the productive age group. But if that's not managed well, we're not going to have golden generation. We're going to have maybe silver generation, maybe I don't know what it is, but it's not golden if we're not preparing this next generation of leaders systematically, intentionally, well, right? So I think that's the huge challenge that we have. And obviously the pandemic has kind of ruptured the plans that the government has around preparing the next generation of leaders. Right? So this demographic trend is very important. But obviously, not only technological breakthrough, not only the socio-demographic shifts, the black swan events like COVID-19, that is the big thing that kind of puts leaders in a disarray, because they're not sure what to do now in a lot of cases. So I read World Economic Forum, and in their latest reports about the future of jobs, and I also read Deloitte latest insights. All these reports, right, they're basically telling us the same things. And I choose the most important piece of information that I think is relevant to all of us. In the future, here are the top skills needed. And it's not what you think. It's not about, oh, I need to understand AI. I need to understand machine learning. Well, maybe you do need all those, but the top rare skills that are needed, basic skills that are needed, are analytical thinking, active learning, complex problem solving. These are the things that we always take for granted, but these are the basic fundamental skills that without which you cannot learn machine learning and AI and all those things, right? So let me just give you an example. If we always think in a linear fashion, right, rather than using system thinking, we're not going to be able to solve tomorrow's problems. Because we always think that the cause and effects are linear. So, if I do solution A, then the outcome would be B. But that's not the case in our world today, right? And then COVID-19 is a great example. I'll give you more example later, right? So it's important to actually understand that it's okay to fail, right? That's what active learning means, right? It's okay to not be afraid to lose face, kehilangan muka. If I make a mistake in front of my boss and my colleague, because I'm experimenting with new ideas, right? I'm bound to fail if I venture out and do new things. But people who don't have that learning attitude, rather they have this performance attitude, they are so preoccupied with performing high at all times and do not want to fail. And those people cannot lead into the future, right? So that's how it's all relevant. So here is a study that I did with my colleagues, right, some time ago, about creativity. And we found that servant leadership is actually a force for creating innovation and creativity. So the story is, this is a field study that we did in 2 countries, right? And we did this in Australia and China, comparing the data in those 2 countries. But what we found is the same. This multi-level study, we looked at how servant leadership, because of leader identification, will create employee creativity. So what is meant by that is, followers typically define themselves by internalizing their individual identities in reference to the leader-follower relationship. So what I mean is, if I'm being led by my boss, right, even if I'm close with my boss, then I always see myself as part of that relationship. And if I trust my boss, if I believe that she will help me to achieve my best, right, that will actually free me up to be more creative, because I know if I fail, I'm not going to be punished. If I fail, I'm not going to lose my job, right? So that leader identification helps me as an employee to be more creative. That is the story that we kind of show an evidence of in the paper. And that relationship between servant leadership and creativity will be higher in companies, and this is the second graph there. The slope is going up for high support for innovation. So in companies that have high support for innovation, the link between servant leadership and employee creativity is much stronger, right, than companies that do not have any support for innovation. So that is the story, and that is why it is important to be change agents using servant leadership approach. So that's the first point. I think I have to pick up my pace here. So the second one is, you have to embrace adaptive challenge, or adaptive challenges, because there's more than one. So let me tell you a story about these 4 pictures, right? The first picture there is a picture of a black swan, and if you have been to Perth in Western Australia, you will find black swans there. So, and this is coming out of the research studies done by Nicholas Nassim Taleb, where he discussed that not every crisis is identical, there are crises which are considered rare outliers, outside the normal bell curve. And examples would be Asian financial crisis in 98 or the tsunami in 2004, right? These are black swan events. People do not know that's going to happen, right? And we only rationalize after the fact. Now the second one is an elephant. Now you know the phrase an elephant in the room. That is a problem that is on your face, but we try to avoid that problem because it's so annoying. It's visible to everyone. No one wants to deal with it. And Nicholas Taleb mentioned that what we have here is black elephant. Black elephant is a combination between black swan and an elephant, which means, right, COVID-19 is not a black swan event. That's the theory that has been going around. But it is a black elephant event. Why? Do you know that there have been 11 pandemics since the plague of Justinian in 600 AD, right? Think about it. 11 pandemics that we have since 600 AD. So this is not the first one that humanity has ever had. In 2015, Bill Gates actually has warned all nations that we have invested very little in a system to stop a epidemic. In fact, in October 2019, there was this thing called Event 201, which was a global pandemic exercise run by WEF and Johns Hopkins University and Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. It's a call to action, and they had 7 recommendations what to do if there was a pandemic, and no one cared, no one listened to that, and that's why we are in this current situation. Now the butterfly, the next picture, is coming out of this Edward Lawrence's work, and he argued that everything is connected. So he had this saying that the flap of a butterfly's wing in Brazil can set off a tornado in Texas, which means the small changes that we make in one condition will produce large effects in a complex system. Now think about this pandemic situation, right? What the government says, PPKM has to start now, or maybe a month later. That single decision, that's kind of a seemingly small decision in one condition can has huge effects, ripple effects in almost nearly every area of human lives, right? Because we are part of this complex adaptive system. So if you look at the literature now, there's a lot of studies looking at the complexity leadership, right? We cannot afford to just simply make decisions without understanding how that would affect, in a large scale, especially if you are a public leader. If you are a leader of a huge organization, it will have effects on the lives of many, if not thousands and millions of people, right? The next picture there is a frog, obviously. Why do I include that picture of a frog? Because many of us leaders, we like that frog in the kettle. If you put a frog in a kettle in a hot water, they would jump straight away. But if you slowly heat up the water, the frog will enjoy and swimming, around the water and not knowing that the water is getting hotter. And then when it realizes all that, it's a bit too late, right? So most leaders respond too late to changes that are small, slow, and gradual. Because our internal apparatus is very much like those that the frog has. We only respond quickly, to sudden changes, but not slow and gradual changes. What are some of the examples of slow, gradual changes? Well, the pandemic is one. Climate change is another. Environmental challenges. Do you know there'll be more plastic bottles in our sea than fish in 2050, right? Those are small gradual changes that we don't care and do not want to know, right? Which will have huge effect. And I think leaders have to be aware of that and embrace adaptive challenges. So here is another example, right? And if you understand Cynefin framework, he would argue that we are moving now to a world where we have more complex problems than complicated problems. Now, complicated problem, an example of that would be, if you have to fix Tesla. This is a picture, not of my car, but I just grabbed it off the internet, right? This is a picture of Tesla, very complex car, sophisticated car with all the technology inside and all that. But it's only a complicated problem. If you have to fix it, yes, you have to have a lot of talents and know-hows to be able to fix the car. But you would know, right, if you do certain things, this is going to be the outcome. But not with the COVID-19. It is a complex problem where the causes and the effects are not known. You're not going to know if we do this, what's going to happen to our body? What's going to happen to our society if there's a policy, around the COVID-19 pandemic? So this is an example of a complex problem. So David Snowden, who came up with this Cynefin framework, argues that in dealing with complex problems, it's not enough to have best practice. Companies always have best practice, and they want to emulate other companies' best practices. But in complex problems, that's not enough. It's not even enough to have expert practice. You know how in a pandemic, the government relies on health experts, right? Doctors, all these people who know what to do in emergency health situations. But in complex situations, it's not even enough to rely on the experts' practice. Why? Because there are emergent practice. We are learning, we are adapting as we make decisions. So that's why it's kind of a rather absurd these days to make plans for 10 years, because we're not going to know what's going to happen next week, right? So that's how it changes radically the way we lead the organization, the way we lead people. Here is another good example, a case study that was put up by a few authors and reported in Harvard Business Review recently, right? We are now in the largest work from home experiment, and we kind of forced to be part of this experiment. There's no consent form for every participant. We just thrown into this experiment, right? And now they found that most people are actually in that split opinion about whether or not I want to go back to work. When they were asked how often would you like to have paid work days at home, 30% says 5 days per week. In other words, I'm not going to go back to my workplace. I enjoy working from home, right? Because it would help me with other tasks. It would help me. I think Dr. Mirwan mentioned in the beginning that people with young kids, and my children are now in their teenage years, right? But we still are helping my son with homeschooling as well. So 30% more or less do not want to go back to work. But hang on a minute, 21% said that they never want to have paid work days from home. Maybe they are empty nesters, maybe they are singles, they want to have relationships with their colleagues, and they want to go back to work, right? So what we know is that people are different, right? People are different. And what we also know from research is that if you're working from home, the pandemic has actually extended the average workday by 2 to 3 hours. Too many Zoom meetings, we are Zoom out, 3 hours extra during the pandemic. Now, if you are a leader who has to decide, how do we help our employees to maintain their productivity in this climate? It's very complex because we do not know if we make decision A, here is going to be the effects. We do not know that. So people kind of experiment with all kinds of different decisions, right? But one of the best solutions to this, one manager puts it this way: I treat my team like adults, not children, but adults. They get to decide when and where they work, as long as they get their jobs done, as long as their targets are achieved. I don't care where and when they're going to do their work. Why? Because people are different, right? If they want to go back to workplace, to the office, then you have to facilitate that. If they want to work from home, again, you have to facilitate that. Help them with the internet, help them with the tools that are needed, and perhaps computers and desks and all that. So we need to understand that we can no longer operate based on tradition. And people always say, but this is the way we always been doing things in the last 25 years. But that's tradition, right? You know what tradition is? The best definition I love about tradition is like a peer pressure from dead people. Peer pressure from dead people. That's what tradition is. So we shouldn't be pressurized to follow tradition if that no longer serves the bigger purpose, right? And so that's my second imperative. You have to embrace adaptive challenges. The next one, the third imperative, we have to create psychological safety. And this is kind of a flowing on from the previous point. If you want people to operate at a level of productivity that is acceptable or expected, you need to nurture this culture where people are not being fearful of how others respond when they make mistakes, right? When they ask questions, when they seek feedback, when they propose a new idea. Amy Edmondson is the person you want to search and Google if you want to know more about psychological safety. She has done amazing work in this area of psychological safety, and it has been studied in numerous experiments and field surveys, and she and her teams and others as well found that if you have psychological safety in the workplace, in your organization, you're going to have a lot of these positive things basically go up, right? Because Amy Edmondson argues that we all do this tacit calculus. Tacit calculus semacam perhitungan di kepala, at micro behavioral decision points. So we always think like this: if I make this decision, if I do that, will I be embarrassed? Will I be criticized? Will I be penalized? Will I lose my job? See, people always think about that question before they do something. But if there is no psychological safety, then people will say, you know what? I just want to play safe. I don't want to take that risk and then lose my job or get penalized, do not get my promotion. I just want to play safe and not making waves. And what you have there is stagnant organization, less optimum performance from your staff. So psychological safety is very important. So companies like Ideal, one of the product design firms based in the US that's very well known for its creativity, has this high level of psychological safety. They have this motto: fail often so that you will succeed sooner. Gagallah sesering mungkin sehingga engkau akan sukses lebih cepat. I think that's a great motto for post-pandemic world, for any organization, right? So what does leaders have to do, right? If they want to create this safety, you have to protect voices from below. You need to hear opinions from right, left, back and forth, everyone. It's interesting that many of you are perhaps linked to Faculty of Psychology, right? And many of you are psychologists perhaps in this Zoom meeting. We all know that people are essentially extroverts or introverts. Or, if you're like me, I'm an extroverted introvert, right? So kind of in the middle. But at least one third of the people in your meeting room at any given time will be introverts. Now, introverts, they're not going to say what they have in their mind if you do not give them permission, if you do not encourage them to say what they have in mind, because they're busy thinking about, should I say this? Should I not say this? And by the time they make that decision, the meeting has moved on to the next point, right? So they're not going to have the opportunity unless the leaders actually stop looking around the room and say, what do you think, Budi? What do you think, Iwan? And what do you think, Wati? Gitu ya. Budi, Iwan, Wati, are they still the three most important names in Indonesia? So, you have to give them the opportunities to ask. In fact, you have to allow them to ask stupid questions. You never underestimate the power of stupid questions in large groups. Because if people can ask stupid questions, you know what, with stupid questions, there are no stupid questions actually. There's a lot of people who have these questions, but they are so afraid of asking them because they thought, if I ask those questions, I'll be perceived as stupid people, stupid person. But a lot of people in that room have that exact same question, right? So you have to encourage people to ask whatever question they have without fearing that they will be embarrassed or penalized. The other very simple thing that I would like to recommend, and leaders, this is a skill, right? That is very easy to learn, but a lot of leaders neglect. You have to listen more. You know what is interesting? Okay, I hear a bit of a voice. Okay, thank you. One of the best things that I always remember about listening is that the word listen and silent, they are made up of the exact same letters, right? So if leaders want to learn to listen well, all they need to do is to be silent, is to shut their mouth basically and let the followers talk, because that's what we need in this post-pandemic world. We need to have the collective geniuses of the people, of our staff. Left alone, individual leaders cannot solve all the problems. You need all the collective geniuses of your staff. A lot of companies have this syndrome that is now famously called HIPPOS, highest paid person's opinion. If the CEO or whoever the highest paid person in the room has said something, then that is the the final decision, and you cannot argue against that. You cannot say, I don't agree with that, right? But we have to get rid of that mentality in the post-pandemic world. If you are the highest paid person in your meeting room, you need to be aware of that in a culture where a lot of us are in Indonesia, with highly paternalistic, high power distance, leaders have to be aware of that and say, okay, as a leader, I have to be the last person to say what I have in mind. Because if I always be the first who say what I have in mind, the others will not going to give them their opinions. So this is such a simple thing that a lot of leaders forget. If you want to harness the collective geniuses of other people. Speak last and listen first, right? Now, what about in this current pandemic where we all do our meetings through Zoom like this and Microsoft Teams or Google Meet or whatever software that you have? Well, if you are micromanagers, if you cannot trust people to work from home, think about what the implication is. Number one, perhaps you shouldn't have hired those people that you do not trust in the first place. Number two, maybe you haven't done a good job motivating them. That's why you don't trust them. Or possibility number three, you might be projecting your own work habits onto them because you're not working productively from home. That's why you keep wondering whether other people are doing the same, right? Or maybe you are all of the above. See, we need to trust that people will be working productively from home, right? If that's not the case, you shouldn't recruit them in the first place. If that's not the case, maybe you should be dealing with them on a one-on-one basis and try to understand them. All right, so I think that's the third imperative that's very important. The next one, number 4, is you have to build resilience in others, because loneliness is one of the major issues in the pandemic world that we are in now. At least in Australia, a lot of people zoom out. They have depressions and all that, and you have to build resilience in others, right? And this is a simple framework that I found very helpful, which I always use with my PhD students, with my more junior colleagues in the department. A lot of people think in terms of personalization. It's all my fault, because I don't know technology, and that's why I do not know how to operate Zoom and all this. Right? It's all my fault because I'm GovTech and so on, right? And you have to say that no, it's not your fault. This is a challenge that is thrown on us from external factors. It's not your fault at all. There are so many people who do not know how to operate Teams, who do not know how to teach online, do not know how to engage with students using Zoom. So it's not your fault. We are all in a huge learning curve. See, we need to tell them that. The second thing, a lot of people say, oh, this will never end. I'm going to die before this pandemic finishes. You have to tell them, look, there are 11 pandemics before the current one. And we as humanity, we have survived that. So this thing will pass as well. It just takes a lot of time, right? And the last one, a lot of people always think, because of my inability to work productively from home, for example, this will ruin my career. And because my career is ruined, my family life will be ruined. My wife will hate me, or my husband will hate me, and basically my life will be ruined. And you have to say, no, you have to compartmentalize the problem, right? If you are building your skill set to be able to teach from home, to be able to work productively from home, it's not going to ruin other areas of your life. It's not going to ruin your marriage. It's not going to ruin your career. This is just a skill set. You have to help them compartmentalize the issue. So think about your staff members, how you can help them in these 3 areas, because more often than not, they will have these issues. So this is another tip to help them to be more resilient. Don't just count your blessings, but count your contributions. Now, this is coming out of empirical field and laboratory studies done by Adam Grant and Jane Sutton. They found that people who think of themselves as a benefactor of a good thing rather than a beneficiary of a good thing would be more willing to be prosocial, right? So it's not only, if we have given a lot, then we'll be more prosocial, but it's more towards, if I have given more, then I'll be more kind and gentle and compassionate. So the more I perceive myself as someone who has given to the society, for example, I'll be more likely to even do so in the future, right? So what we need to do as leaders, as an implication of this study, you have to remind people what their contributions have been in the past, right? What their strengths are, how lives have been changed or at least touched by what they have done in the past. And if they know that, they will be more pro-social. That's basically the implication of this study. Now, the next one is you have to show empathy just by being curious. This is so simple and yet often neglected. How does servant leaders show empathy? You just call people up. Don't use Zoom. People are tired of having Zoom sessions. Just text them or call them. Maybe not WA, because again, too many WA texts, right? But maybe call them up and ask how they're doing, how their families doing. And so you will help them by knowing their issues, their problems and their challenges. Maybe they have sleep problems. You can call them up at 3 o'clock in the morning or something, right? So, and the next tip that I can give you to build resilience is be vulnerable yourself, right? Be vulnerable yourself. Being vulnerable is about making yourself open, sharing your challenges, your fear, your problems to your followers. See, people always think if I share my problems and my fears with my followers, they're not going to respect me. That's not true at all. Because research studies have found that if you share your limitations, if you're being vulnerable, they are actually identifying with you more, right? The leader-follower dynamic is much stronger if leaders are willing to be vulnerable, right? So I think that is very important to understand. So the last one, because my time is almost running out. In doing all of those things, right, leaders have to remember to take care of themselves. If you're running out of stamina, you're not going to be effective. Here's the principle. You cannot give what you do not have. So you have to make sure you have the stamina, the energy. When I talk about energy, it's physical energy, mental energy, spiritual energy, all types of stamina that you need to be able to lead and serve other people. You have to restore your various energy, right? And a lot of leaders who exhibit attention division traits are having problems with taking care of themselves. They have insomnia, thinking about what I'm going to do tomorrow morning, right? They become impatient. They are easily offended, right? They always check on their stuff with texts. Where are you? What are you doing? And all that. See, if that's the case, I think the leaders are not taking care of themselves. So the last study that I want to share with you was done by a colleague of mine, Jeremy Liao. Now, this is interesting study because he found, and this is using ESM, experience sampling methodology, which is kind of the latest thing in leadership studies and in psychology studies. They found that servant leaders will be depleted physically, right? But that depletion, and that's why it's state depletion, not trait depletion, that depletion is temporary. And I thought, when I thought about this, and I said, wow, this is important finding, because what is meant by this finding is that if I'm a servant leader and I want to help other people, I'll be tired physically after helping them. But that physical tiredness is only temporary, because I know I'm making a positive difference in other people's life. The next morning, I'll be okay, right? So, flowing from this study, one of my PhD students, I have 10 PhD students now at Swinburne, and one of them, we are looking at the difference between mental depletion and physical depletion. So our argument is that while servant leaders can be physically depleted, they may not be mentally depleted because they know that what they do is part of their calling. What they do is making a positive difference in other people's lives. So the depletion, the physical depletion, is only a state like a trait, a state like property, I should say. It's not going to last long because mentally they're actually getting excited of the difference that they make on a daily basis. So I think it's an important study that we are now currently conducting. So those are the 5 imperatives, and if you want to know more about servant leadership, and you can, and this is kind of the freebie, free stuff that I want to give you. The article that I mentioned in the beginning, because you are staying until the end of my talk, I want to appreciate you and share with you this link. If you go to this URL, you can download the full article because we made it free access, full text, free access to everyone. And this is the systematic review of the servant leadership concept. So thank you for your attention. I appreciate that, and look forward to the next session and then the Q&A later. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the insightful presentation, Professor Sendjaya. So before we proceed to the question and answer session, we still have another speaker, and I would like to introduce our second speaker. She's a notable scholar from the University of Indonesia. Could the committee please show the profile of our second speaker, please? Thank you. Our second speaker, a notable scholar from the University of Indonesia, Associate Professor Corina Riantoputra. Dr. Corina is an expert in the field of organizational behavior. She's a member of Globe Research Project, a prestigious international research project involving 110 countries, focusing on leadership and organizational behavior effectiveness. She is also a member of Global Work Design Research, a collaborative research project involving 40 countries that aims to expand our understanding of how aspects of work design relate to employee outcomes and how national culture influences this process. Dr. Corina also served as consultant and trainer in the area of leadership, human resource development, and organizational change for business, as well as not-for-profit organizations in Indonesia. Currently, she is the advisor for the commissioners of the Indonesian Railway Company, atau PT Kereta Api Indonesia, and member of the University Board, or in Indonesia we call it Majelis Wali Amanah of Universitas Indonesia. She's there along with well-known policymakers such as Sri Mulyani Indrawati, Erick Thohir, and Bambang Brojonegoro. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Associate Professor Corina Riantoputra. Doctor, time is yours.
Terima kasih Pak Dr. Mirwan Surya Perdhana. Thank you for the very concise summary of my what I am doing in Indonesia right now. Jadi yang terhormat Prof. Ambarianto, Vice Rector for Research and Innovation Undip. Prof. Ambarianto masih ada di tempat ya Prof. Yang terhormat Prof. Dian Ratnasawitri, Dekan Fakultas Psikologi Universitas Diponegoro. Yang terhormat Pak Sendjaya, Profesor Sendjaya, a colleague and I would say a friend. Dan yang terhormat juga Pak Mirwan. Terima kasih untuk kesempatannya. It's very hard to do your speech after Prof. Sen doing his speech, isn't it? how can I match up to his standard? But well, I am not going to match up to his standard. I'm just going to share with you some of the thought and research in Indonesia that hopefully will help you to see the what can we do as scholars and as researchers as we try to investigate the issue of leadership and organizational behavior as we try to contribute to our society. And for my presentation, I would share screen and ask my assistant, Andrew Setiono, to do share screen. Is it possible, committee, to give to allow Andrew Setiono to share screen? Okay, thank you. So the topic is leading in a post-pandemic world. That is the picture of Universitas Indonesia, Ibu Bapak, teman-teman sekalian. I think I miss coming to Universitas Indonesia, but I would also love to visit Universitas Diponegoro one day, yeah, after the pandemic is over. When we talk about leading in a post-pandemic world, it becomes more evident how important context is, just like what Prof. Sen is saying previously. You remember Prof. Sen is using the butterfly effect to explain to us how small, tiny butterfly butterfly scale changes may have big impact, such as a hurricane, for example, or a financial crisis. So in 1960s, this is Edward Lawrence talking about the interconnectedness of many parts of the ecosystem. And we know about that, and we learn about system thinking in 1960s, but I don't think we understand it as much as it is now. So the whole concept of the butterfly effect, which is from my perspective is quite similar with the domino effect, relies on the notion that everything is part of a larger system, in which small changes in part of a system can result in larger changes to other parts of that system. So it highlights the interconnectedness among parts of the system and show us the possibility of nonlinear impacts on a complex system. So for example, the interconnectedness of system we can see in automobiles. Various systems work to enable the car to operate. The fuel, the system, the transmission, the braking, the heating and cooling, the GPS navigation system, and everything. All part of the car work in combination to make the vehicle operate. And if any of them fails, the car will not perform well or will not perform at all. So each part is important. So we need to see each part as a part of the whole system. The same way we see organization. In organization, systems consist of people, information, and processes that work together to make an organization healthy or unhealthy. And this notion of the interconnectedness is making more clear with the use of technology. So I would share with you here, with technology, the butterfly effect or the domino effect is even more clearer now. It's ramped up with technology. So imagine, if you can imagine, if I ask you to draw the edges of your organization, let's say student organization or family or business organization or whatever organization, just imagine an organization and build the edges, draw the edges of your organization. Will you draw a brick wall saying that this is my organization? Or would it be something more porous, something yang lebih seperti ada membran sel, lebih ada kaitan antara antara that organization with the external organization. I suspect you would draw more porous, more like a cell membrane of one organization and the external. And that is what happened with we know about interconnectedness, but with technology, the blurred boundaries of every organization is becoming more and more clearer for us. Think about a family, your family. Previously, we think that children are safe at home because the bad guys are out there, outside the home. So for example, for my children, when they are little, they are now an independent adult. When they were little, I said they have to be home before 6 o'clock because I'm assuming that after 6, night come and I want them to be safe at home. The bad guys are outside their home. But because of technology, the bad guys, the bad influence are inside the home through mobile phone. So there is no clear boundaries from one organization to the external organization, from one family to the external organization. Children at home in their own room are experiencing internet abuse, for example. At home, they also are able to learn so many good things, as well as seeing and learning scary stuff from the internet. So the internet is making the organization is blurry. The interconnectedness from one part to the other part of the ecosystem is become more clear. And if we see the business organization, we also see that that business organizations are becoming ever more permeable, more blurred. So the concepts such as open innovation, intra-firm collaboration, reliance on contingent workers should be on our radar. HR directors or leaders should think about this. We should think of organizations as heavily influenced by the context. That is why when Prof. Sen said that leaders should really think about the context, I really agree with that. And I feel that many organizations, although theoretically or in their mind, they agree with that notion, in the practice, they are struggling with the general insight to understand that certain decisions create impact within organization and outside the organization, as well as changes in the outside of organization impact in the organization, positive or negatively. And we have known this for several years. Since technology, internet becomes so, we use it so heavily. So what is the difference between COVID-19? I would say that COVID-19 is the enabler of the use of technology. So the use of technology become more amplified. People use it more often. For example, 2 years ago, we already know about webinar, but not many people used it. Now we use it more frequently. 2 years ago, before COVID-19, we knew about Zoom meeting, but we, at least I did not like it at all. I did not like when people invite me to a Zoom meeting. And nowadays, we use the Zoom meeting perhaps 2 times a day. So even a grandma in my area, in my cluster, the RT saya ini, now is so comfortable using Zoom meeting. A grandma, 70 years old, untuk arisan. Yeah, what is arisan in bahasa in English? I don't know. what I want to say is because of COVID-19, it seems like our eyes are opened. We are being pushed to use technology at its optimum level. We are being pushed to learn about it, and then we realize that so many things we can do with technology. At the same time, this COVID-19 also blurred the boundaries between work and home. So because we have to work from home, because of technology, we can work at home. Because of technology, our children study at home. But because of that, we have to work while at the same time paying attention whether our children are studying. Like Pak Mirza saying that he has to do childcare, daycare while working. That is the era of COVID-19. So the interconnectedness between among parts is becoming more clear for us. Because of the increased use of technology, we are becoming more comfortable with it. We use it more often. And the other side of it, we are also experiencing information overload. We got information from everywhere. So the context now is that the interconnectedness become clearer. The interconnectedness become more not only clearer, but the speed is huge. If we hear what happened in Afghanistan, the Taliban take over that country, and suddenly so many webinars in Indonesia about what is the impact of Taliban in Afghanistan to us in Indonesia. These people realize that the interconnectedness is huge. At the same time, I would say, I would propose that leaders should really understand that. Leaders mean maybe parents for their children or leaders in organization should really understand that the members of our organizations can get information from many places. They have access to more information than before, and their behaviors are influenced by not only us, but not only what we say, but from their context. In other words, they are a potential source of information because they learn from many places, but also it means that they may challenge us. They may disagree with us. They may have different opinion than us. That's what leaders should understand. So the members of our organization is a huge potential for us. That's why the COVID-19, the World Economic Forum say COVID-19 is not a VUCA world anymore. It's not about volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, but the COVID-19 is actually a great reset. A great reset about how we treat other people, a great reset about how we think, our mindset about other people, whether we respect them as a source of information, a great reset about how we see the interconnectedness of whatever we want to do in our organization. So beside COVID-19, I would say that the other context that we need to pay attention is our members of organization. 52% of Indonesian workforce now is young people, millennials, age 36 and younger. And these people need to be active. They need to feel that they can contribute meaningfully. They need to see themselves not just be part of a machine and getting all the direction from above, but they need to be part of the discussion. And this is huge. Bapak dan Ibu. Meister in 2017 said that 83% of HR leaders agree that employee experience, that is the extent to which members of the organization feel that they are part of the organization, is an important or very important aspect of the organization's success. So we see here, one is the COVID-19 that provide us, that push us to see the interconnectedness, that push us to realize that everyone is having information, and the other side as the our member of organization that have the need to express their ideas, the need their ideas to be treated as important. So the context here is like weighing scale. If a leader understands the interconnectedness of all parts, if the leader understands that information is spreading everywhere and they are just one person or one team, I think they would agree, they would acknowledge that they do not know everything, that they need their employees to interact with the employees. So what I would suggest is, first, to be a leader in a post-pandemic world, we need to do sense-making. We need to understand our context better. And to do that, I would suggest three things. First, reflective thinking. Now more than ever, leaders need to reflect. I think it was Gosling and Minsper in 2005, I think, who said that reflective thinking is one key aspect that leaders need to do. I would argue that nowadays it is more important than ever. Leaders need to stop and reflect, find out what they don't understand. Professor Sen previously said that in a system, we are moving from simple to complicated to complex things, that we don't even understand what we don't understand. So if leaders understand that they don't understand what they don't understand, they would stop and reflect and find out whether what they have done is fits with the context or not. Find out what they understand and what they don't understand, or take time to write down some questions that they would like the answer. Reflective thinking, Bapak dan Ibu, teman-teman semua, I think what is more important. And second, take a helicopter view, because we understand the importance of interconnectedness. So if a leader in university want to make a decision, the leader need to take a helicopter view to see the faculties, and not only their faculties, but their I will not say competitors, but collaborators outside their universities, maybe other universities, maybe industries, maybe other diaspora in Australia. And I would say that Undip has made a tremendous, very strategic move by having discussion with diaspora in Australia. It means that the leadership has taken a helicopter view and see the potential working together with diaspora in Australia. That is brilliant. That's what leaders should do. Take helicopter view, understand what other people is doing, understand what we need to do better. At the same time, leaders also need to see from the operational level. Or in Indonesia, we always use the term blusukan. Yeah, since Pak Jokowi become our president, Pak Jokowi do blusukan so often. Why? Because he needs to check, he needs to see what happens at the operational level. And he needs to discuss with the people at the operational level to see whether they have information important for the leaders. One example is when John Hopkins Hospital want to improve their service. So instead of just taking the benchmark from other hospital, from their discussion with the operational level, they got the idea that the best place for sleeping is not hospital. The best place for sleeping is hotel. And that makes John Hopkins Hospital benchmark with a hotel and set a standard like hotel for their service. So we can see that a helicopter view, benchmarking with other organizations, seeing what happens from the above is important, as well as going to the operational level, talking to people. Like what Prof. Sen said, that we have changed from thinking that the most important opinion is people from the highest paid to the people that we need to appreciate everyone's opinion. So we have moved from the highest paid person opinion to everyone's opinion. This is what we need to do when we want to do sense making. But again and again, I see that leaders fail to do this. Why? I think because of one thing: how we formulate our relationship between leaders and employees, members of organization. I would just quote some people here. One is Hamel, who's saying the importance of humanocracy or humanized bureaucracy. He is saying that people should be the center of organization. People is not just the instrument that serving rules. I would say that Hamel is challenging us to see the importance of people. So this model is challenging us, our assumption about bureaucracy, whether rules are the leader, the king, or people is the king. This is not easy, but at the very least, we can say that Hamel, guru in management, in HR, is challenging us to move from bureaucratic control to paying attention to people, meaning that we need to make our organization perhaps more flatter. Dave Ulrich come or teach in Indonesia so many times, yeah? Highlight the importance of employee experience and saying that how important it is for us to appreciate employees, to also, along with Hamel and Fraser, to incite curiosity, optimizing courage, contribution, and curiosity. This courage, I would highlight very much, and I would say I would explain this later, because if we say that the members of organization is important, if we agree that we want to appreciate them, if our mindset has changed from just thinking that our ideas is the most important one to the ideas of the members of organization are the important ones, we need to optimize inside their courage. I would cite here one study. And it's my research. Yeah, I forget to talk about my research. In my research, I see that the leaders, the role of the leaders is nurturing engagement of the people. I will talk about this research more after I talk about Prof. Sen's research here. This is Prof. Sen's research in 2000 that is published in 2015. How servant leadership influence organizational citizenship behaviors and what is the role of LMX and psychological empowerment. I would highlight here the role of leader-member exchange because I want to encourage you, Bapak dan Ibu leaders, to change the way you interact with the members of our organization. COVID-19 pushed us to redefine, reshape our interaction. Leader-member exchange is very important. And when I talked to several CEOs, they said that during this pandemic, they put this leader-member exchange, the relationship between them and their employees, as highly important, not only for the employees below them, but 2 levels below them. Prof. Sen's research here is in China, if I'm not mistaken. Prof. Sen can correct me if I'm wrong. But from the article in the Journal of Business Ethics, the research is in China. It's a dyadic research between supervisor and subordinate. Let me share my small research here in Indonesia, in Bali actually. This research is from my undergrad student. So this Hita Duarsa is my undergrad student. Why I am sharing this with you? Because I believe some undergrad students are attending this webinar, and I would encourage you to do good research like Hita here, Hita Duarsa, who try to do the supervisor subordinate diets and see whether how benevolence value influence leader effectiveness. And Hita and I found that leader-member exchange is the key, the mediator. So you leaders, you may have good heart, well-meaning, compassion, but without a good relationship with your member of your organization, no one can see that. Leader-member exchange, the relationship between you and your subordinates, 2 levels I would suggest, is very important. But I would say that even though we all know this, it is not easy for Indonesian people. Why? First, because of the culture, and second, perhaps because of the characteristic. We all know the culture that's called high power distance culture, or I hope we all are familiar with this. Power distance is the extent to which individuals feel comfortable with the distance between the powerful and the least powerful. For example, between those who have a degree, doctor, professor, sama yang from elementary school, atau between those who have rich and have not, or because those who have between those who have a position, leaders, and have not. That's why we use the word the honorable. We put them high, there, up there, because we want to respect them. And that happens, that is a beautiful culture, the beautiful culture that we should nurture. But at the same time, I would say that we have to understand the downside of this culture. Because of this culture, employees may unconsciously limit themselves from expressing ideas. They do not want to be perceived as disrespectful. As well, leaders may unconsciously dismiss employees' idea. Let me give you an example. I had a discussion with an operational manager, a factory what you call it, operational manager of a factory. So this person is the second below the CEO. And this person is graduated from Magister Management Universitas Indonesia. So you can see this person is smart. This person has high position. But when I talk with him about whether he is engaging and expressing ideas to his CEO, and he said, can I use bahasa Indonesia here ya? This person said, ya enggak lah Mbak, katanya. Saya kalah awu. Kalah awu ya, kalah wibawa in talking with that person in the highest level. That helped me to see that unconsciously, even smart person with high level of high position still put himself below the CEO. So CEO should understand this. The members of our organization should respect their leaders, but leaders, you need to understand the unconscious barriers of people to talk. And second, I would suggest that leaders need to sharpen their communication skill. This is the challenges. Leaders may be willing to accept employees' ideas, or like Prof. Sen said earlier, leaders need to build their psychological safety, make them feel secured. But how? Most leaders do not know how to do it. Let me give you an example of this research. This research, I choose research with my undergraduate students. This is Marisa and Farida from Universitas Indonesia, and this research is published in Makara, Human Behavior Studies in Asia. This is a Sinta 2 journal and also an SC journal, Emerging Sources Citation Index. I simplified the model here just to talk about what our topic, how to encourage people to talk, how to appreciate their ideas. And this research is, the sample is from a government institution, one of the most, how to say it, many graduates from best universities in Indonesia, such as Undip, ITB, UGM, UI, is looking forward to be employed in this kementerian. Yeah, so these people are smart people from smart universities. But when they work in this government institution, in this ministry, in this kementerian, they choose not to talk, but silence. They're not talking, they keep silence. Acquiescent silence is they keep silence in expressing their ideas, their positive ideas, because they think this is not useful. And defensive silence is when they choose not to speak up because they feel that they protect their position. And you know what influenced them? What factors is important here? Just like what Prof. Sen said, psychological safety. So the higher psychological safety, the less silence. The more safety they feel, the more they are willing to talk. Yeah, the relationship between psychological safety and silence is negative. As well, the relationship between task cohesion and silence is negative, meaning that if leaders is able to make everyone know their task, everyone agree with their task, they will be more willing to speak up. Let me share you another research. And this one I choose from your journal Psikologi Undip. Why I choose this journal? Because Journal Psikologi Undip has increased tremendously the last 5 years, I would say. I have high respect for the chief editors and all the people that work for this journal. That's why my students we choose this journal to publish our research on voice behavior. This is another research, different from that the previous one. Voice behavior, the extent to which people is willing to speak up. Again, you see that power distance orientation, or the extent to which individuals feel that they have a big distance between them and their leaders. Power distance orientation relate negatively with voice behavior, meaning when they feel that they are just little and their leaders are so big, so they need to respect them, they choose to be silenced. They do not want to speak up. But perceive organizational support, when the leaders, the organization provide more support, they will talk more. They will be more willing to speak up. We can see in the slope analysis here. In the slope analysis, you can see that here the low power distance and high power distance in the one dimension, and voice behavior is in the other dimension. And we want to see whether when voice behavior will be increased. You can see the importance of perceived organizational support. High perceived organizational support, the orange one, is important for those who are low in, those people who are low in power distance. We can engage, we can encourage the way they speak up with, if we give them support, organizational support. So I would suggest that leaders need to learn how to provide organizational support. Leaders need to reflect about their characteristic and competencies. This is my next topic, characteristic and competencies of leaders. Because of the importance of context, because of the big change, the unpredictability, because of the interconnectedness of information and impact of decision-making, the leaders need to be humble. Leaders need to be willing to learn. Leaders need to view themselves more accurately, need to be able to see in what way they know things and what way they need to learn from the members of their organization. Leaders need to learn as well as to unlearn. And second, leaders need to build relationship with their members of organization. They need to appreciate others. They should not punish wrong ideas. And this is a typical Indonesian, I think. Leaders need to engage more in humor. People in Indonesia love humor. Humor makes the relationship warm. So leaders need to build relationship and use humor as well. And the relationship will be, we can develop that if we have this humble and willing to learn characteristics. You know, one of the characteristics is we need to also admit if we make mistakes, admit if we don't know something, admit if the members of organization is perhaps better than us in one way or the other. And third, I would suggest that leaders need to really strengthen their ability to explain why. Because of the competing information that the members of organization get from everywhere, from the context, from the, we have talked about the blurred organization. They learn about everything from everywhere. So leaders need to really sharpen their ability to explain why a decision needs to be taken. Only then leaders can win the heart and the mind of their employees. if you see the many discussion, I do not quote here, but from the Harvard Business Review, how important maybe ability to explain why is one of the most important skills, competencies that leaders need to develop. So here I suggest we all leaders, Bapak dan Ibu, improve ourselves. I want to share with you another research from just published, a small research with my student. This is Aditya Septiandari. We published in journal Prasetya Mulia Business School, that is International Research Journal of Business Studies. This journal is a Sinta 2 journal. My student here, Adit, talk about leader humility, and she is able to see that the most important role of a humble leader humility, is to increase perceived organizational support, and that perceived organizational support then encourage accountability. Earlier, Prof. Sen talked about we need to treat our employees as adults. We need to trust them that they work, they can be accountable. But how they then individually can increase their accountability, their willingness to be accountable with their work, to do their work the best they could, and not just making excuses. Aduh maaf, wifi-nya lagi tidak stabil. Aduh maaf, saya harus ngurus anak saya. They are not going to make excuses if in themselves they are accountable people. And how to increase their accountability? We need to give them perceived organizational support. And how they feel that is from the humble leader. The leader that willing to give them what they need, to talk with them, to communicate with them, to ask whether they have problems. For example, whether they have to look after their families, their sick parents, or perhaps their neighbors are having COVID and they themselves feel less secured because of the neighbors is having COVID. So they need to feel that support. Only then they can improve their accountability. And to do this, every leaders need to learn to be more humble. We also need to be more humble in relation to encouraging everyone to speak up. You remember earlier, our research showed that psychological safety individual power distance make people unwilling to speak up, because we, Indonesia, according to Hofstede, we are a high power distance culture. We treat other people, we are comfortable to put other people very high. But we perhaps need to change that. We need to respect others. Younger people need to respect older people, but older people also need to respect everyone. Let me quote a proverb, peribahasa Melayu. Peribahasa Melayu that talks about leaders. How far is the leader should be from the member of organization. They said leaders itu jaraknya dari anggota organisasi hanya selangkah. Yang didahulukan selangkah. Yang ditinggikan seranting. Seranting, Bapak Ibu, not that high, seranting. Yang dilebihkan serambut. That tipis, tipis sekali. Yang dimuliakan sekuku. Ini peribahasa Melayu ini help me to understand how bahasa Indonesia is encouraging us to treat each other with respect, egalitarian, to treat each other as persons who are meaningful. If we want to take a look at the our proclamator. How do our founding fathers call each other? Do they call each other how do they call each other? They call each other as Bung Karno, Bung Hatta, Bung Yamin. Muhammad Yamin yang sebagai pahlawan di Surabaya. Bung is egalitarian. So what I want to encourage Bapak, Ibu, teman-teman semua is how we try to respect everyone, especially those that putting themselves below us. We need to encourage them to speak up. We need to respect them. We need their voice. We need their ideas because they know so many things. Because we are not the person that know everything. Because we need the interaction. We need to renew our relationship with them in a more based on respect. So I would suggest leaders, we all need to improve our communication skill. For aspect here, the art of asking questions, the art of listening, the art of building psychological safety, and the art of building trust. Perhaps many times when I talk with leaders assume that they can, their communication skill is good only because we learn to speak when we are 1 year old. But not many people know the art of asking questions. For example, if we ask people, how are you? Bagaimana kabarnya? If we ask our children at home after their study, how is the school? Bagaimana tadi sekolahnya? The answer is only one. Baik. And it means that our question is not really asking questions. We are just basa-basi. And that is what we should move away from. Leaders should really should really want to ask questions, want to know. So leaders should ask specific questions. For example, kita telepon. I agree with Prof. Sen. Use telephone. Allocate time to talk with our members of organization. Talk with them. Ask 5 minutes, 10 minutes, but ask specific questions. How is your children? How old are them? Oh, they are in year 3 elementary school. Oh, it means they are learning multiplication. How do they do that? Are they good at that? Are they having problems with maths, etc.? We show them not only basa-basi, pura-pura peduli, but really peduli with them. Prof. Sen says servant leaders are those who put others first. Think about them, not basa-basi. Think how hard it is for your members of your organization to work and doing daycare at the same time. Once I talk with association occupational safety people, occupational safety, those who really understand about safety. And when I talk about this, one person admit that, you know what, ma'am, during last meeting with the CEO, I have to answer important questions. And at the same time, my daughter keep on nagging to make me, asking me to teach her about maths. And I flip, bahasa Indonesianya, saya sabet kakinya. That is the reality that the members of organization are facing with working at home. Not everyone have Wi-Fi. Not everyone have rooms. in one room can be several people work together. So harus matiin, nyalain wifi speaker karena anak kita juga ngomong. So we need to show our compassion to members of our organization. We need to ask them questions, specific questions. My time is nearly up, 4 more minutes, so I'm not going to talk too much about this. Prof. Sen has explained about psychological safety, about making them feel comfortable in expressing wrong ideas. Well, if we teach in Indonesia, we know that from 100 students, 25 students, if we ask them any questions, many of them will no questions at all. So perhaps we lecturers should ask them, make sure that they ask questions. If we, for example, by saying that there is no stupid question here, you can ask stupid question. What you should not do is be quiet. So I will give you, perhaps reward them with if they ask question. But most importantly, not just the reward, most importantly is appreciating them. Many times when they answer, their answer is not specific to our questions, but we can try, and I learned this in Australia because I lived in Australia for 12 years and I absorbed the culture there, how encouraging the culture is. When someone try to answer or try to ask question, the lecturer will say, "Good try." "Oh, I like that question." Or, "Oh, that answer is on the right direction, but can you elaborate on this aspect?" And not saying, "Ya, kok jawabannya kayak gitu, dari tadi nggak dengerin nggak?" Gitu ya. This is different. I have this one experience, it's a really eye-opening experience in Australia when I had this one lecturer, and he explained everything so systematically and nicely. I'm so happy. Just after he explained something, my friend raised question and asked question, and her question is absolutely the last sentence of that lecturer. Jadi baru saja dijelaskan, teman saya ini langsung tanya hal yang persis sama. Jadi saya ngelirik ke teman saya ini, saya pikir, ya ampun, nggak memperhatikan nih orang, baru aja dijelasin, gitu ya. Terus saya pikir pasti nih lecturernya bilang, "Kemana aja kamu? Dari barusan saya bilang, ini last sentence, kamu masih nanya." Saya pikir lecturernya akan bilang begitu. But no, what did the lecturer said? "Oh, I am sorry if I am not making myself clear enough." And the lecturer repeat his words. And that for me, it's absolutely amazing. Perhaps we need to learn to build psychological safety. We also need to learn to build trust. Let me share the last research. This is my research with my doctoral student. Again, this is a good research method with time-lagged design, and show that how important is affective trust in a leader endorsement. Leader endorsement is to what extent members of organization will say that this leader is a good leader. I want to be led by this. I want to be led by this leader. Ya, kalau dia mau pilih leader endorsement, to what extent employees endorse that leader. You know what? Even though the leader perhaps showing perilaku bermusuhan, I think the word perilaku bermusuhan is better here than abusive supervision, because the term abusive supervision, the definition is not physical, is not sexual, but the verbal is harsh and showing a hostility. But if the leader is able, has managed to build affective trust with their employees, you know what? Sometimes leaders, as human beings, also make mistakes. Sometimes leaders say something that is not proper. But if when that happens, when that leader say something not proper, aduh gimana sih kamu nggak bisa kerja, aduh ini kan udah saya bilangin dari kemarin, aduh telat lagi kamu, gitu ya. You know what? The members of our organization, your subordinate, will be able to forgive you if they have affective trust on you. That affective trust is very important. Okay, 1 minute here because I only have 1 minute left. So I conclude that leading in a post-pandemic world, I would suggest a new relationship between leaders and employees. Leaders should really appreciate employees in their sense-making. In their sense-making, they have to encourage employees to share information. Leaders and employees should redefine their relationship. It's more equal, more encouraging, more appreciating. And to do that, leaders, you need to reshape your characteristic. We need to be more humble. We need to be more focused on employees' well-being. We should not just focus on ourselves. We should sharpen our communication skill. We should be able to explain why we have one decision or the other. We need to build psychological safety. We need to build a better relationship between leaders and employees. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And I would encourage a better relationship between Universitas Diponegoro and Universitas Indonesia. Would be happy if we can have joint research with my cluster research, that is leadership, decent work, and diversity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Corina, for the insightful presentation. So it's actually very related here. So I have something in mind about what will I say for the conclusion. But before that, we're going to the question and answer session. I will share my screen here. We already have 2 questions directly for Professor Sendjaya, 2 questions directly to Dr. Corina, and 1 other questions. Okay, so perhaps I will address the audience who have asked their questions to through the meeting chat first. So first, for Professor Sendjaya, what should we do if there are many resistant followers, as information from the organization to the followers often disrupted? And the second, there's some case where the leader have able to create a no pressure work environment, but it turns out it makes some followers underestimate their job, or even how can we actually be respected while not being feared by the followers? Thank you. So please, Professor Sendjaya.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Mirwan, and thank you for the 2 people who Ibu Enda dan Pak Muhammad Lufti who asked these questions. So the first one first, the question is how to deal with resistant followers because they not clear about the information top down from the organization. See, I think we need to understand why they are being resistant. I think that's the first step. So what leaders might do is to actually ask them, right? What are some of the barriers, halangan yang mereka miliki so that they do not want to agree or support the idea or decision that is being made by the management, right? So we need to ask them. Often the problem is management or leaders make decisions without involving the people who are going to be affected by the decision. That is what often happens in organizations. I have had some opportunities in the past and currently as well to consult organizations and develop their leaders as well in executive development training. And this is a common problem. let me explain it this way. There's a saying in Latin. I think it goes nihil de nobis sine nobis, and it's a great principle. Basically, it means nothing about us without us. What the principle is saying, we should not let our representatives, whether it's managers or politicians, make decisions without involving the people who are going to be affected by those decisions. So let me give you an example. I'm involved in a research now in Indonesia, and this is outside my typical area of organizational leadership, because this is talking about DLP project, right? Disabled Leadership Project. So we are looking at community leaders among people with disability, kaum difabel kalau di Indonesia disebutnya. And in that context, it's very important whatever decisions that are being made, right, around policies for people with disability at the governmental level, in national, local level, these people have to be involved, right? Because otherwise, you're not going to get the support from these groups, and often their voices are marginalized, right? So that's something that I emphasize with my team in Indonesia, working around people with disability. So I think that's number one thing. So we need to ask the followers why they are being resistant. Yeah. The second thing is to look at the principle. How is decisions are being made in the organization? The third one, this is my final answer to the first question. We need to give people clarity if we cannot give them certainty. All right, that's the principle. In the pandemic situation like we are in at the moment, leaders cannot be certain about many things because we do not know the outcomes of our decisions. So we have to tell them, I cannot promise you anything, right? I cannot promise you that decision that we are making is the best decision. But if you cannot promise a certainty, give them clarity. See, I think, Bu Enda, hopefully that will answer your question. What followers, staff are lacking typically is clarity, not certainty, right? Clarity. So clarity means, okay, here is what we're going to do. Here is who will be affected. Here are the set of changes that will happen next week, next month, and so on. So clarity is very important during the pandemic. If there are redundancies, for example, right? And you say, I'm not sure who's going to be losing their jobs next month because we're still calculating everything, right? Okay, that's uncertainty, but you need to give them clarity. The clarity can be something like, we're going to be very open with you. We're going to be as honest as possible about the whole process, and we're going to tell you enough time in advance, before the person affected will lose their job. So this is the clarity that they want, even it's given in the middle of uncertainties. So that's my answer to the first question, Pak Mirwan. The second one, so basically the question is, if we do not give them pressure, they will underestimate the job and they underestimate the leader. If we pressurize the followers, they're going to fear us. I think that's the bottom line of the question. I think we need to understand, and this is something to do with the next webinar. Actually, I will discuss this question more in depth. The second webinar is about leadership development, right? So make sure you come to that webinar, because I give, but here is the bottom line. I think leaders, followers underestimate the job because they're not sure what the tasks involve. Okay, if they do well, what are their rewards? So we need to use that philosophy of gelang karet. Karet gelang atau gelang karet. the only way that rubber is going to be effective is when you stretch the rubber, correct? Ya, karet gelang kalau tidak di stretch tidak akan berguna untuk mengikat sesuatu. So, in other words, you have to stretch people. You have to give them expectations clearly. However, you have to say, I'm here for you. I will help you. I will support you. You know, I will be your mentor, your sounding board, your guide. Whatever you need, as far as I can provide, I will help you. So you need to combine pressure and expectations as well as love and support and compassion and attention. I think that's the key, right? So let me close that part by saying this: you have to train people the best you can so that they can leave your organization, but you have to treat them well enough that they do not want to leave your organization. Let me repeat that again. Anda harus melatih, mengembangkan staf Anda sehingga mereka itu bisa meninggalkan organisasi Anda kapan aja dan akan dapat kerjaan di tempat lain karena mereka laku, sudah di training. Tapi Anda juga harus memperlakukan mereka sebaik mungkin sehingga mereka tidak pernah mau meninggalkan perusahaan atau organisasi tersebut. If you combine those two principles, you're going to have the best talents in the organization. Thank you, Pak Mirwan.
Terima kasih, Prof. Sen. Bapak Ibu, misalkan ya, Bapak Ibu mau bertanya dalam bahasa Indonesia, sebenarnya boleh juga ya, Prof. Sen ya. Jadi monggo ya. Baik. The next questions are from for Dr. Corina. Yeah. The first is from Demaseta Reza. How can a leader guarantee employees' psychological safety? And the second, how can a leader build up his or her subordinates' psychological capital, knowing that the recent condition is not conducive? Please, Dr. Corina.
Thank you, Dr. Mirwan, Pak Mirwan. In Universitas Indonesia, people call me Mbak. In Universitas Indonesia, in psychology is Mbak. Jadi saya muda terus gitu ya. So please feel free to call me Mbak or Ibu. Nggak usah pakai dokter supaya lebih akrab. Thank you for the questions dari Demas. Demas barangkali ya. Psychological safety. Okay. How to say? We don't have much time, and this is a big topic, but let me give you just a few tips. One, we have to understand that to build psychological safety, we need time. We need time. And our culture, for example, at school, people in Indonesia, when they speak up or they answer the teacher's question, many times the teacher is punishing them for their wrong answer, or if they ask stupid questions. So this psychological safety, they have built not safety, they have trained themselves not to speak up. So it is not that easy. So when you want to talk, Ibu Demas mau membangun psychological safety, first we have to understand that the culture here, not everyone in their schooling years, in their family, experience a safe atmosphere. That is why when they enter this workplace, it is not easy for them to speak up. So I think perhaps not in my other research, I measure whether people are having ideas, if they have ideas, if they have efficacy to talk, whether they will be willing to talk. They have idea, they have efficacy, but still they are not willing to talk if there is no psychological safety. So how can we as leaders make sure that they have psychological safety, first we have to understand that it needs time. So we have to be patient. We have to be patient. If we ask them, if they come with problems, I once was a vice dean in my university, and the karyawan, oh Mas Demas, sorry ya Mas Demas, the karyawan, the employees come and giving me problems, right? Bu, there's problem, this and that and that. And I said, so do you have any idea how to solve the problems? They will all be quiet. So because they are not used to, we have to build that habit. We have to teach them how. So I teach them how they see the problems, how they need data, how they have to see the problems. And I said, you go out again and come back to me tomorrow with alternative solutions. And they said, what if our solutions are not good? Yep, that is alternative. So do not punish wrong ideas and tell them that whatever happened, the leaders are the one who have the responsibility, but the leaders are willing to listen to the employees. After they make the solutions, they present to me the solution, the three alternative solutions. Each one of them are backed by data. And I ask them, which one is the best one? And they keep looking at each other and they said, do we really have to choose the best one? Yes, I said, it's okay. You choose the best one, but I will make the decision and I will be responsible. You know what, Mas Demas, that is what happened with many people in Indonesia. They are not used to. So we have to be patient. We have to train them to speak. We have to show them that they are not penalized for wrong answer or wrong solution. We have to stop giving them too much advice, I would say, too much advice, and try to listen more. And hopefully in 2 years' time, they will be able to speak up more and feel that they are comfortable with the speaking up. And second one is from Pak Omar. Pak Omar, how can a leader build up his or her subordinate psychological capital knowing that the recent condition is not conducive? Yeah, precisely, Pak Omar, because of the not conducive situation, because of the this COVID-19 time is the time for anticipatory grief. Have you heard that term? Anticipatory grief. So people are sad, not because of the pain that they experience or their extended family experience, but they have pain, they have concern, they have grief because of they anticipate that it could happen to them. If their neighbors are having a COVID-19, or if they're they heard their friends died because of COVID-19, they feel this pressure, this, oh, it could happen to me. This anticipatory grief is so big. And that's why, yes, this is not a conducive time. But because of that, precisely because of that, we have to communicate with them more. We have to understand where they are coming from. We have to ask them specific questions to understand their specific situation. You remember that Prof. Sen in his speech earlier said that everyone is so unique. So we need to understand the uniqueness, the situation of our members, the members of our organization, at least 2 levels. We need to understand them. Berapa anaknya? Orang tuanya tinggal di rumah atau tidak? Istrinya, suaminya kerja juga atau enggak? Or if we have young people, apakah ayahnya itu masih bekerja atau kehilangan pekerjaan? So we can develop their hope if we understand their situation. So what I want to share here now, perhaps build communication so we understand their situation. Because we understand their situation, then we can help them to see past the situation and giving them the optimism, to move forward, the hope, by giving them in our organization to be honest with the situation and walking with them together. So, for example, one organization, an automotive company with 150 people. The CEO during this pandemic, what he did is he expressed the situation, the financial difficulties with everyone, one by one. Everyone one by one. And she explained that because of this, we need to reduce your salary. For you, because you are high, we will reduce 50%. For me, because I'm at the top, I will reduce my salary 90%. They see that. And that gives them hope that I can trust this person. This person is looking after me. The situation is not conducive, but I can trust my leader. Thank you, Pak Omar. Hopefully that's enough. Thank you, Pak Mirwan.
Thank you, Mbak Corina. Oke, supaya lebih akrab ya Bu Corina ya.
Iya.
Baik, ini mungkin ada satu pertanyaan lagi yang tadi di awal sudah saya rekap dari meeting chat. Tapi nanti selanjutnya supaya lebih interaktif, mungkin saya akan panggil penanyanya langsung untuk bertanya langsung ke Mbak Corina atau Pak Sendjaya. Baik, ini yang terakhir menarik masih dari Mas Dimas lagi, Bapak dan Ibu. How can a staff remind her of his leader or boss of not being stubborn in taking decision or solution in a group problem? Seperti tadi sudah disampaikan, Indonesia high power distance. Kalau staffnya merasa keputusan atasannya salah, sebaiknya bagaimana ya cara yang bagus supaya dia tidak kena tidak didamprat oleh atasannya begitu. Baik, nah, silakan Bu Corina atau Pak Sendjaya, monggo nanti bisa saling menambahkan.
Pak Sen mau duluan atau saya duluan?
Silakan duluan, Bu Corina.
Katanya gitu, katanya Pak Sen leaders harus ngomong terakhir, jadi katanya Pak Sen terakhir.
Bisa aja.
I would say that this new relationship between leaders and members of organization requires leaders to be humble, but it also requires members of organization to know your place. If we are not the leader, we have to understand that the leader is the one who will take all the risk of that decision. So instead of seeing him as stubborn, perhaps we have to be empathic with that person and thinking that what is my role in this situation? One, I would say that, know your place. I talked with Korean Association of Human Resource Development, and they have this question, Mas Demas. Exactly why? Because the young people in Korea, they are graduated from overseas. They came back to Korea. They want to work, and they feel that their boss are so stubborn and cannot see their ideas. So perhaps during our discussion, we agree that first, members of organization, you have to know your place. You have to respect your leaders, that at the end, the leaders are the one who will take the risk, every decision. And second, knowing our place also means that we know that we can speak up, but not demanding that our ideas are the one that is being accommodated. The leaders take ideas from many places. So our place is only speak up, talk. It's much better if when you talk, if you can provide data, because data will help the leaders see where are you coming from. Or you can provide by experience in other company, but in essence is provide something to show that your ideas are meaningful to be considered. And third, because I am sure that everyone is a leader, even though maybe we don't have a leadership formal position, but informal position, we are also leaders. We can lead by examples. We can show people this is how a leader should be. And we forget about our boss. We forget about criticizing our boss. We challenge ourselves to be a better leader in informal situation, perhaps. I'm sure Prof. Sen will add much more interesting stuff there. Saya lihat-lihat waktu soalnya.
Thank you. Thank you, Bu Corina. Ya, beberapa hal saya tambahkan. Are we speaking in Indonesian now or in Kromo Inggil?
Jawabannya,
Boleh, Pak.
Jadi wong kuwi kudu tansailing marang karo sing dhuwur. Ya, gitu katanya ya. Jadi maksudnya itu kita harus ingat bos kita ya. Jadi we need to let me put it this way. There are several things. This is a problem that I now categorize as stuck in the middle. Jadi berapa tahun yang lalu, mungkin 7-8 tahun, I was speaking at OJK. And they are interested in servant leadership ya, karena otoritas jasa keuangan itu kan melayani katanya, and we discussed stuck in the middle problem, dan ever since that interaction I always found that this is a pervasive issue ya. Jadi the middle management people feel that they want to change, they have new ideas, but it's really hard to convince the top management people because they are stubborn. They from the past generations, or there's so many reasons why. So I've been thinking about that a lot actually, and I have a few things that might help. Number one, we have to make sure that there is a good trusting relationship with our boss and our boss's boss. Especially because we are in a collectivistic society, right? If your boss, if your managers do not trust you as someone who have a pure motivation, good intent to develop the organization, to develop others, then they're not going to support you. And often people who feel that their boss is so stubborn is because there's no good relationship, no good working relationship with the boss. So make sure you have that trust. And then the next issue is how to build trust with your supervisor and with your boss. That's a different topic. But the second thing that I want to mention here is that as Bu Corina has mentioned, you need to understand that your boss and your perspective is sometimes different because he or she will see the problem from a higher plane, a different angle, different perspective. If you don't believe me, just stand on the table, around you. You will see suddenly the local surrounding completely different from where you stand, right? That's your boss knows more about, the consequences, the policies, and the potential issues that might come up if we go ahead with your idea. So make sure you try to understand the perspective, right? You need to understand the data, the context very well before you present your idea. And the last one, the third tips, and this is very practical. This is something that has been discussed empirically. They're looking at how Steve Jobs at Apple, the late Steve Jobs, sudah almarhum, he was very adamant, right? Sangat yakin, sangat ngeyel gitu. Apple should not make phones because Apple is a computer company. Should not make phones. Should not make iPods. Remember iPods? But the staff, the middle managers, finally able, after so many times trying, they were finally able to convince Steve Jobs so that Apple created iPhones, iPods, and all those things. You know how they did it? They planted a seed of doubt. Now, I think that's a strategy that we should use. They plant a seed of doubt, ya, menanamkan benih keraguan in a good way, ya. Maksudnya gini. So they would ask Steve Jobs, what if we do not make computers and our competitors are producing it? What if Microsoft produces all these computers and they become the largest company with the largest market share? Where does that leave us? You know, that's the seed of doubt. What if Microsoft creates, because Microsoft was the biggest company of Apple and still is, right? So Steve Jobs starting to think, yeah, what if that's the reality, right? And then one day he said, you know what, I've been thinking a lot. I want to create computers. So he claims that that's his idea, right? Because he's a control freak, authoritarian leader. He's not a good leader, by the way. But the middle managers knew that the idea actually was planted by them. So that's what we have to do if you deal with stubborn leaders. You might say things like, kalau menurut ibu atau menurut bapak, ya tergantung yang stubborn nih bapak atau ibu kan, itu adalah keputusan yang terbaik. Apakah mungkin ada kondisi-kondisi tertentu di mana keputusan itu tidak lagi menjadi yang terbaik? Terus dia mulai berpikir, iya ya, what if that's true? Terus dilanjutkan, bagaimana kalau ada kondisi-kondisi lain yang bapak atau ibu nggak tahu, bahkan kita nggak tahu? Berarti kan keputusan itu belum tentu yang terbaik. See, if you plant seeds of doubt like that, you know, your boss will start thinking, you know, maybe I'm not all-knowing after all. Maybe I could be wrong. So, if the leader wants to take the credit, that's fine. See, masalahnya adalah kita suka khawatir siapa yang dapat kredit nanti, yang dapat brownie points. Tapi kalau kita nggak khawatir, just plant the seed of doubt. Mungkin leadernya akan claim the credit, but it's okay. Akhirnya organisasinya bisa maju, orang-orangnya bisa maju. So those are a few tips from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Sen dan Bu Corina. So this will be the last. Yang tadi nggak jadi karena kayaknya waktunya mepet sekali. Tapi ada dua pertanyaan yang mungkin bisa dijawab secara singkat, Bapak Ibu. Yang pertama, berapa lama sih membentuk pemimpin yang baik? Butuh waktu berapa lama? Karena most of the leaders mereka itu datang tanpa persiapan ya, ditunjuk atau tiba-tiba jadi leader gitu ya, menggantikan bisnis orang tua atau tiba-tiba dipromosikan seperti itu tanpa ada persiapan. Lalu yang kedua, gimana sih kita bisa tahu Bapak Ibu kalau kita ini adalah pemimpin yang baik gitu? Mungkin bisa diberikan jawaban singkat Profesor Sen dan Ibu Corina.
Oke, saya mulai dulu ya, Bu Corina. Ya, jawaban singkatnya gini, berapa lama untuk jadi pemimpin yang baik? Seumur hidup jawabannya. Ya, seumur hidup. Karena gini, leadership itu is about learning how to be yourself in the best way possible. Jadi, leadership development itu seharusnya mulai pada waktu kita masih kecil, dalam keluarga. You know, your first leadership mentor should be your parents. Nah, masalahnya banyak orang tua tidak tahu tentang leadership development. Ya, dan kita tidak akan menjadi good enough karena konteksnya berubah. Kalau konteksnya berubah, kita pun harus berubah. So we keep learning. Itu jawaban singkatnya.
Ibu Corina, ada tambahan atau menyambung pertanyaan selanjutnya, Bu?
Pertanyaan selanjutnya apa ya?
Kita bisa tahu kalau how can we know that we're a good leader already?
Oke. Yang tadi, oh sorry, in English. Yeah. With that answer, how long does it take to create a good leader? I agree 100% with Prof. Sen. So I just type it down that leadership is dynamic. It is influenced very much by context. When the context is different, the leaders need to change. So the leaders need his or her whole life to learn as a leader. And the goal is different. So Yeah, I agree with Prof. Sen there. And also that answer help us to be more humble, I think, as a leader, as not saying that, yes, I am a leader. I can, I already have all the characteristic to be a leader. At the same time, perhaps I want to answer Prof. Sen from a different point of view, even though I agree that the leadership need to be developed your whole time. But perhaps I want to encourage people, young leaders, to see several characteristics that you need to have before, if you are trusted to be a leader. Because many people are trusted to be a leader, assigned as a leader, even though they don't feel more equipped. And perhaps they are asking themselves, oh, how long do I need to develop myself? I would say that from my general observation, one of the most important thing for a leader or to prepare themselves is their willingness to learn and unlearn. So that is part of the humble leadership. So if you are willing to learn, even though you don't know anything, you will know many things if you are willing to learn. So the willingness to learn and to unlearn. And to do that, you need trusted people to that you ask these people to give you, provide you with feedbacks when you are moving away to the right course. So only by then you can. It's hard, yeah. It's hard in Indonesia if we don't have trusted friends to work with us as leaders, because not many, even bosses, is willing to give us the real evaluation for ourselves. So we need trusted people to tell us. And then I would say that the second one, the first one is willing to learn, including there is the trusted friends. And second one is whether your vision, your goal is for yourself or for other people, including there is your organization. If you can asking yourself that question all the time, you are already in the good path as a leader. Because a leader who only talk about himself or herself is basically not ready to be a leader. So to answer the second question, how do I know that we are good enough as a leader? Can we use that two answers before? How do we know? Is one, whether our vision is for ourselves or for other people. And for this, again, we need trusted friends who will be talk to us, comfortable in telling us as it is. And second, if we are keep learning, if we have stopped learning, then we are not good leader. And third, by definition, leader is someone who has goals and able to influence others. So perhaps we have to question ourselves whether to what extent we are successful in influencing other people. And that influence usually start with the examples, our behaviors. Perhaps that Pak Mirsan, ini udah hampir jam 12.
Ya, baik. Terima kasih Ibu Corina. Terima kasih
Hampir jam
Profesor
11, sorry.
Sendjaya. Ya, oke. Baik. Memang sangat, kalau saya lihat memang sangat antusias sekali penanyanya di meeting chat, banyak pertanyaan yang belum terjawab. Tapi semoga rangkaian World Class Professor Series ya from the Faculty of Psychology held in the next two sessions. Ya, one is on the 17th of September, and the other one will be held on early October, if I'm not mistaken. So it will enable the attendants, honorable attendants, to give a further insight about how to lead in post-pandemic situation. So I'm sorry for those whose questions has not been answered yet, but I really believe that if you could contact Professor Sendjaya or Ibu Corina directly through email, they will be very happy to discuss anything, and perhaps who knows that some of the participants here will be Professor Sen's next supervision or Bu Corina, bimbingan S3-nya Bu Corina ya Bu ya, semoga saja. Baik, so I would like to make a summary about the two sessions that we have today. We are now entering the new Great Reset era, where COVID has enabled all the technological use for people coming from all generations. Indonesia is a unique society, high power distance society. That's why when we use technology, we will not able to have good interaction as good as before with our employees. There will be new challenges. We need to think about our employees, especially since the idea are important and needs to be appreciated. However, due to the technological challenges of the COVID-19 result, leader needs to do several things. They need to build a new type of relationship, superior-subordinate relationship. They need to practice reflective thinking, understanding the big picture and what's really going on at the operational level. And if you ask what kind of leader that could well suit with the post-pandemic situation, the answer is servant leader. Apa itu servant leader? Servant leader adalah leader yang selalu paham that it's not about their self and their followers, but also the context of the situation. It's in COVID-19, in high power distance. When you come to, let's say, other part of Indonesia, they are more masculine. So you need to adapt and adjust with the situational context as well. Servant leaders are leaders who adaptive with changes, create psychological safety culture, build resilience in others, take care of themselves before taking of the others. Yang saya suka dengan Pak Sen tadi emphasizing bahwa capeknya tuh capek senang begitu ya Pak Sen ya. And also leader have to humble and willing to learn and have practice better understanding of the cultural values that could hinder employees from speaking up their ideas. Tadi kita cukup banyak membahas tentang power distance, tapi ke depan mungkin ada banyak other cultural values yang mungkin berpengaruh dan perlu ditelah ulang. Demikian Bapak Ibu untuk summary dari acara kita di pagi hari ini. Selanjutnya waktu saya kembalikan ke MC.
Thank you very much to Mr. Mirwan Surya Perdhana, SAMM Ph.D. as moderator. And thank you very much to Professor Sendjaya, Ph.D. and Associate Professor Corina Riantoputra, Master of Commerce, Ph.D. for the information and knowledge given to us in the leading post-pandemic world webinar session. Hopefully, the insights will be useful for us. Reminder for all participants who haven't filled out the presence form, please kindly fill the link in the chat room. Thank you. Kepada seluruh peserta yang belum mengisi daftar hadir, dapat mengisi daftar hadir yang tertera di chat room. Terima kasih. Ladies and gentlemen, the next session is the handover of certificates. I would like to invite Professor Dian Ratna Sawitri, as Dean of Faculty of Psychology, Universitas Diponegoro, to give a certificate for speaker and moderator. Professor Dian Ratna Sawitri, the screen and time is yours.
Thank you, Tasya. Operator, bisakah minta tolong untuk menayangkan sertifikat? Ya, dengan bangga dan ucapan terima kasih, saya serahkan sertifikat ini kepada Prof. Sendjaya Ph.D. yang telah berkontribusi sebagai speaker dalam program Visiting Podcast Professor di webinar pertama dari 3 rangkaian webinar kami, yaitu Leadership and Career Development Webinar Series di 3 September 2021. Terima kasih banyak Prof. Sen. Kita nanti ketemu lagi di tanggal 17 dan 8. Harapannya teman-teman semua juga ikut serta.
Terima kasih Prof. Fitri.
Terima kasih. Operator bisa next untuk sertifikat yang akan diberikan kepada Mbak Corina. Terima kasih Mbak Corina Riantoputra, Master of Commerce Ph.D. yang telah berkenan menjadi speaker dalam webinar kita kali ini. Ini kali pertama kita bertemu, tapi sangat menyenangkan sekali, dan peserta dari berbagai universitas dan juga berbagai fakultas di Undip ini juga menyatakan mereka senang. Ada beberapa yang mengontak saya, dan senang sekali Mbak Corina di dalam webinar ini bisa berduet dengan excellent bersama Prof. Sen. Terima kasih Mbak Corina.
Thank you Ibu.
Terima kasih. Next untuk Pak Mirwan. Silakan operator. Ya. Untuk Pak Mirwan Surya Perdhana, SEMM Ph.D., terima kasih telah berkontribusi sebagai moderator dalam acara ini. Pak Mirwan telah banyak berkolaborasi ya dengan Fakultas Psikologi. Jadi Pak Mirwan ini dari Magister Manajemen Undip, banyak berkolaborasi, melakukan riset-riset bersama kami. Terima kasih banyak, dan tentunya di webinar yang akan datang, kami semua menunggu partisipasi Pak Mirwan sebagai narasumber ya untuk di webinar kedua. Semoga sukses selalu. Terima kasih Pak Mirwan.
Terima kasih Ibu.
Ya, terima kasih. Waktu saya kembalikan ke Tasya. Silakan Tasya.
Thank you for Professor Dian Ratna Sawitri, all speakers, and moderator. Ladies and gentlemen, before ending the event, there will be a photo shoot session again. For all participants, please turn on the camera. And when it's ready, I will take the pictures by the counts of 1, 2, and 3. So I will start. 1, 2, and 3. And one more. 1, 2, and 3. Thank you for your participation. And finally, we come to the last session in this event, which is closing. We would like to express our gratitude deeply to speakers, moderator, committee, and all participants. Hopefully, we can apply everything that we've learned in our research, and this can help us stay motivated to increase the quality of our research. I apologize profusely for any words that are less pleasing to the audience here. I am Tasya Artia, and I'm signing out from the event. Thank you. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I will see you on the next opportunity. Goodbye. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam. Terima kasih. Terima kasih Prof. Sen. Mbak Corina,
ya Ibu Witri,
Pak Corina, ya Bu Witri,
Pak Corina.
Kita ketemu lagi 2 minggu lagi dan 2 minggu lagi. Semoga Bu Corina juga bisa ikut.
Iya Bu,
Terima kasih,
iya,
Bapak.
saya upayakan. Terima kasih.
Terima
Selamat
kasih.
siang Pak Sen.
Terima kasih.
Terima kasih. Sampai ketemu lagi.
Saya izin keluar ya Bu.
Monggo.
Terima kasih Prof. Fitri.
Terima kasih Mbak Novi.
Alhamdulillah. Kita
Ya,
bertemu
makasih ya
lagi.
Tasya.
Tasya, terima kasih.
Ketemu lagi tanggal 17 ya.
17 September dan kemudian 8 Oktober. Ini juga peserta yang masih hadir mungkin dengar, jangan lupa ya.
Iya, halo.
Oke, kita bisa live ini ya. Mari, afternoon.
Baik, terima kasih banyak Ibu.
Kasih lo Tasya.
Kembali kasih Ibu.
Mas Herman tadi slide-nya jadi di-share nggak? Slide-nya pembicara 1 dan 2. Mungkin ini di live dulu ya. Kita live dulu.